Genty bounces outside, has a seam. Ashton Genty, he's 10, he's touchdown, Boise State.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
One-on-one down the sidelines. Caught! Flag! Touchdown! Brown doing it for the Cats!
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Here is Scatterboo. On top, balance. Stays on his feet. And rumbles into the end zone.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
And it's going to be a double pass. Aller loads, fires, deep. Man, there is Warren. Got it! Touchdown, Penn State.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Tyron Lacey, the motion man. Pump fake. Now Smoak.
Genty bounces outside, has a seam. Ashton Genty, he's 10, he's touchdown, Boise State.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
One-on-one down the sidelines. Caught! Flag! Touchdown! Brown doing it for the Cats!
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Here is Scatterboo. Contact balance. Stays on his feet. And rumbles into the end zone.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
And it's going to be a double pass. Aller loads, fires, deep. Man, there is Warren. Got it! Touchdown, Penn State.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Tyron Lacey, the motion man. Pump fake. Now
Can you? All right. Can you guys hear us on the chat room? Welcome into 365 Sports on Friday.
All right. Listen, we got to tell everybody what's going on. There's a technical issue that keeps repeating itself. Sorry about that. All the work Paul put in with the opening, it went to hell. So here we are, and thank you for your patience. Craig and I are in studio today, and maybe that's why all hell's broken loose, because we're normally getting ready for a high school game, but not tonight because it's a bye week for the team that we cover. We are here tonight. We'll take you up until 6 o'clock. There's a lot to get to, including wanting to get different types of opinions on the Tony Bennett retirement that came down yesterday and his audio from today. We'll get to that in a second. There is a lot going on, including a Big 12 game tonight between BYU, 13th ranked Cougars, hosting Oklahoma State, and boy, do they need a win. There's some issues on who's starting at quarterback here or there. There's a look back at college football last night. And, by the way, if you haven't gotten into the college football link that we put up all the time, a chance to win the $100 gift card from TexasBeefHouse.com. Sam Kahn, Peyton Soyer, Connor O'Gara, Kenneth Davis, Josh Neighbors, Paul's Top 5, Grayson Gruner, and that is our guest lineup in particular ways. Thank you very much for your time today. Here is Virginia men's basketball coach. This was sudden. It's not health related. It ended up being what I first kind of thought, that we are seeing coaches like leaving the game quickly and earlier. They've made millions, and maybe I didn't want to like jump ahead. It's his decision. Not everybody likes the way he's discussed it. Here's Tony Bennett.
Probably the thing that has choked me up the most and the hardest thing to say is when I looked at myself and I realized I'm no longer the best coach to lead this program in this current environment. And if you're going to do it, you got to be all in. You got to have everything. And if you do it half-hearted, it's not fair to the university and those young men. So, and looking at it, that's what made me step down.
I saw Scott Drew, many coaches tweeting out about what Tony Bennett represents and how much they like him, and, of course, won a national title in 19 with Virginia. Not everybody likes this decision. It's not their career, it's his, but people can have an opinion on it at Tony Bennett. Craig, your thoughts? We discussed this yesterday. The good news, it's not health-related. It appears as if it's just the way college athletics is today.
I mean, yeah, I think that it's still very strange timing. Like, you just now figured that out a few weeks before the season started. You got all the way into mid-October and decided that you're no longer the best guy for the job. So, I commend him for doing what he thinks is best for the program. I don't know the man from a hole in the wall. Seem to be a lot of people who respect and like him, so I'll default to that. He's obviously a very successful coach, has been, on the top of the mountain and whatnot, but I I think it's also kind of easy for guys to say now, like, oh, it's just the game today the way that it is. I feel like that's maybe being used as a bit of an excuse nowadays. I'm glad that it's nothing health-related. Thank God for that. But I think the timing's still very strange. I don't know how you got to October 17th and you're like, hey, the season's a couple weeks away. I don't think I'm the guy anymore. That's just weird to me, but I'm glad that it's not anything more serious.
Well, it also allows, because of the timing, Virginia has to promote somebody, and I'm sure Tony Bennett maybe thought about that too, and maybe he's talked to the who is now the interim coach for the 2024-25 season. Dan Wetzel, good friend of ours of the show, Yahoo Sports. Good for Tony Bennett, recognizing the job isn't for him any longer. 1,000 others will beg to replace him. But to quit on the eve of the season after recruiting a team to play for him and now leaving them stuck is terrible. Yeah. He could have transferred into retirement in April.
It makes absolutely no sense. And so, I don't know why the timing was what it was, but I don't like the timing of it at all. And look, I'm not one of these like pushy writers who's like, I'm the moral high ground. And I'm not that guy at all. Like, do what you got to do for the best of you. But it does suck for the players. I mean, they've been practicing with this guy all summer long. They're 2 months into the semester, and, all of a sudden this has dropped. So I don't know what it was. Like, maybe there was signs this was coming. Maybe they already had a good idea of that. But I still feel like actually to hear that it's not a health issue or it's not some sort of scandalous thing actually makes it stranger. Because those would at least explain why you would do it so abruptly. But maybe it's not that abrupt on their side. Regardless, a lot of people, wishing him the best. And I know that this will be used like, see, this is how chaotic college basketball is now. But I don't know. I think that's some of it. I don't think that's necessarily the full explanation, though.
Here's Ross Dellinger from earlier today. College sports has been unwillingly shoved to the brink of professionalism through court orders and state laws. The industry is now immersed in an unregulated system because its own slow evolution. Former AD Kevin White telling me last fall, I'm indicting everyone, including myself, because of the lack of and I know some people get upset when I said this in even 2020 or whenever the NIL thing came up first about guardrails. Not just to help, it's not to protect the schools, it's to help protect the sport. I also saw someone also mention this, is that it's interesting because Tony Bennett just got an extension and a big fat contract extension. He surely didn't mind that, which is a part of also college sports with coaches getting these enormous salaries.
Yeah, I mean, the timing here is so suspect because now he gets to essentially pick the replacement and it still stays in-house and all that. Like, that's the only problem I have with this. I mean, look, if he can't do it anymore, then congratulations for him for stepping away, because there have been hundreds, if not thousands, of coaches who have lost their fastball but still kept hanging on until somebody, put them out of their misery, essentially.
I would say this if it was Scott Drew today announcing his retirement on the eve. Again, the timing, if it was 2 months ago, a month ago, maybe not quite as harsh, but it's on the eve of the season starting that first week in November. From David Teal, from Virginia AD, Carla Williams, when people like Tony Bennett exit men's basketball, exit our industry for something that has nothing to do with coaching or teaching or being a role model, then shame on us. So that's from the AD
I don't know how
at Virginia.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah,
well, we're not asking you all. But that's just her opinion.
I think I disagree with that part of it. Okay. I mean, like, if he wants to go, it's not. Yeah, and look, maybe she is right. It's definitely like the fact that you've got coaches who don't really want to do this anymore is the NCAA's fault. The NCAA needs to admit that it's their fault.
I think the National Association of Basketball Coaches put out a statement saying that they love the game the way it is, but, there's things that obviously could be different.
So, yes, like, it's the NCAA's fault. Like, everything is the NCAA's fault because of an absolutely historical lack of foresight on their part. And
it wasn't even a lack of foresight, though, Paul. Like, they knew what was coming. They just didn't give a damn. Like, they just said, like, Hop, we're just going to play with our money until you force us to not allow us to. It's like they were going to let that ride as long as it could, their whole grift. But they eventually, the court said, no, you can no longer do this. And that's when they finally said, you know what? Looking at it now, we've really been running this wrong, and we suddenly, amazingly, magically realize the spot that we put it's like, oh, yeah, now that you basically had the gun to your head and we're told, like this is the way it's going, then you suddenly had this big awakening of how, so I don't buy any of that crap. Like, that's garbage. I don't buy any of that.
No, they'd rather still be the old, what it is back in the day. Another note, great coach, great dude, but quitting 2 weeks before the season with no health issue is lame. The game hasn't changed since June when he signed a contract extension and players transferred to Virginia to play for Tony Bennett. Game has not changed in the last 3 or 4 months. And here we are today. Tony Bennett, I don't remember ever having a chance to bump into him or Virginia during a tournament. They won it in 2009. He had a great career. How about this stat about him? And in the chat room, you guys, again, someone said the epiphany. Tony Bennett won 6 NCAA tournament games. How many do you have to win the national title? 6. That's the only time.
Yeah.
He's in the tournament quite a bit. He's got 6 NCAA tournament victories, all of them. Listen, if I only have 6 postseason tournament wins and they're all in 1 year, that's a damn good year because that means we won the national title of whatever team. Paxton, good to have Craig and Smokey back on Fridays. Paul, are you happy that we're – okay, that's what I thought.
I mean –
I know you guys, the inmates have been running the asylum while we've been gone, but oh well. All right, so there's all that. BYU tonight playing Oklahoma State. Here is another nugget on BYU. Greg Wrubell, and he even says this, he goes, he's got an intern that comes up with all of these stats about what they've done as a football team. Craig, you mentioned their turnover margin earlier, maybe even it was this week or sometime last week. But here's another nugget about BYU football. Their opponents have had more drives that end in a turnover than a touchdown or field goal. Now, you sit there and you think that, well, that probably should always be the case. No, 18%, though, turnovers, 14% touchdowns, 14% team score kick field goals, including turnovers on downs. BYU opponents turned the ball over 35% of their possessions, more than any other drive outcome on downs, along with, of course, not scoring whatsoever, and the defense has been amazingly stingy.
Yeah, they're a really good team. Looking forward to tonight. I've thought about it a lot because the chaos, lover in me would want to see Oklahoma State win this game. The put the Big 12 in the best position possible side of me knows that BYU needs to win this game for the conference's just overall standing. And again, I'm not going to be the guy who's like always parading like the best thing for the Big 12, but I do think at this halfway point, when you're looking at the landscape, the best thing for everybody involved is for BYU to keep winning until at least to the Big 12 championship game. So, I mean, if Oklahoma State were to win tonight, that'd be great. That'd be amazing for Mike Gundy and company to pull a win out of nowhere, especially on the road at night in Provo. But having thought up long and hard about it, I just don't see the situation in which they do. I just don't know how they do it. Ollie Gordon's one of their captains tonight, I believe. So there's the answer on, how healthy he is, and that's a good sign. We know Rangel's getting the start. What we've seen hasn't been good against this defense.
Did you notice that Flores didn't even make the trip?
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I got that note. Yeah, he did not even make the trip. Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess that answers that, and that's probably smart on Gundy's part because if he's there, then you're going to have all the people on Twitter watching the game like, where's Zane Flores at that whole time? Clearly, he does not believe Zane Flores is ready, Oklahoma State fans. And I mean, as much as you might be second-guessing Mike Gundy or questioning him about maybe the way this team's constructed or maybe some of the decisions he's made, I'm not going to doubt him when he clearly does not want to play this guy right now because he's not ready. So, probably best to leave him at home. But I just don't see a scenario outside of the Cowboys playing out of their minds for the first time this year where they get the win tonight. I mean, it's going to be stacked against them, not only being on the road, night game, midnight or Vampire Cougs and all of that, but they're just playing a better team who's getting really good quarterback play and who's getting great defensive play. Maybe getting a little bit of a run game going. We'll see. But Chase Roberts and company, guys like that stepping up and making plays. There's a lot to like about BYU and not a lot to like about Oklahoma State. So with Oklahoma State getting a couple weeks to prepare for this one, I'm interested to see what they've got to throw at it, it's got to be pretty much everything and the kitchen sink, one would think, to get a win tonight.
Well, and another thing that BYU doesn't do because of what Greg Wrubell and what Craig, you've mentioned, they don't turn the ball over. Now, you never know. One night you just you woke up on the wrong side or you slept on the wrong side of the bed or pillow, and you have one of those days where you just slop it around, or you, not because of the weather, you muff a punt. So that's always the possibility to help maybe kickstart a team like Oklahoma State that's struggling.
Look, they need all that. Like, every bad thing that can happen at BYU, Oklahoma State's going to need it tonight because they've got a problem at quarterback. Do we know if Ollie Gordon's going to play or not?
I just said he is. Yeah.
Oh, he is? Okay.
Yeah, he's a team captain.
Yeah, so Ollie Gordon is playing tonight, but has that mattered all year for Oklahoma State? Not at all. Their offensive line's bad. Their defense is even worse. And, you know, this is not the place you want to be when you're trying to pick yourself up off the mat. A 9:15 Friday night kickoff in Provo.
The Vampire Cougars. I love that. Baylor experienced that, last year? 2 years ago? When they went to BYU in that double or triple overtime game. So there we are with that game tonight in the Big 12, Oklahoma State and the Nugget from Greg Wrubell, the voice of BYU. How about West Virginia? There is a company called Crowdfund that has secured money to fly a banner above the stadium tomorrow in Morgantown, Fire Neil Brown, during their homecoming game. S. Michael DeHart, good friend of ours, we have a lot of West Virginia fans who watch this show, sent that note to me. I'm not into that. I know that can happen. I get it. But, man, I think that press conference earlier this week, if people weren't already a little frustrated with him saying, hey, it's a great atmosphere, enjoy it, tailgating's great. I mean, you can go to that. I think people are kind of almost to the point, well, some are fed up, and then again, Ren Baker's going to make that decision.
I mean, I don't like this for Neil Brown at all, but it shows you the position they're in. They beat the teams they're supposed to beat. Anybody who's slightly above their level, they haven't jumped up and got them. And that's what will get you when it is, you know, when you're just kind of an above-average program right now, which is what they are on the field. Like right now, they're totally average. They're 3-3, right? Yeah. So at 3-3, you know, you're going to have this kind of fit. And he went 9-4 last year and calmed him down, but the sentiment was always there until he went. Unless he was going to compete for the Big 12 this year, that was going to be a problem. Now, look, if they win against Kansas State, you know, they still only have one Big 12 loss, and that was to Iowa State. So as long as they keep winning in the Big 12, they can jump right back in the conversation. They can jump right back in the conversation. I don't think fans feel like that right now, especially after Iowa State just punked them last week at home.
No, fans are tired of not winning games that matter. They want to win the Iowa State game against a ranked team. They want to beat the near top 10 team at home and not walk away disappointed once again. So last week was a bit of a boiling point of here's this massive opportunity. Let's finally take advantage of it. And then you whiffed again. And now you turn around and here's a massive opportunity tomorrow against Kansas State. The good news for West Virginia is after this weekend, the schedule lightens up pretty dramatically. I mean, you've played 3 top 25 teams up to this point. You do, though, however, have 3 road trips in those 5 games. But at Arizona, they're okay. At Cincinnati, they're a good team. Like, that's dangerous, but I don't think West Virginia fans are feeling like you can't win that game. Baylor at home, winnable. UCF at home, winnable. And then at Texas Tech at the end of the year, that's probably the most difficult game on paper remaining on their schedule. So it does lighten up a little bit, but I know it's not about like the wins over, like that's not really what they're pissed about right now is what it's going to look like. They're pissed about right this second.
Penn State,
yeah, and
Pittsburgh,
choking away the Pittsburgh game. Not winning that one was, certainly a thorn in the side that otherwise they're sitting there at like 4-2 right now. But, you know, that stuff happens, so we'll see. Maybe they turn around tomorrow and beat K-State, and then that looks really dumb to have that banner flying. But I certainly understand it. I've been talking about, like, that seat's getting hot again, boys, these last couple weeks. And so that was a bad showing last week that I think just popped the top off a lot of feelings that have been somewhat bottled up recently. And we're back to kind of where we were a year ago when he was very much on the hot seat in the eyes of the public. So they need to perform well, and really they need to get a win tomorrow. If they can do that, then a lot of this changes. But if they don't, then it's only going to ramp up, even though the schedule will seemingly lighten up a little bit.
Sam Kahn will join us to open up our guest here in about 5 to 6 minutes. He, of course, will be on video. How about this stat? This blows my mind. And Ollie Gordon last year ran for 1,732 yards and 21 touchdowns and won awards. Won a lot of them. Up for a lot of them, even the ones he didn't win. He has 384 wins, 384 yards on 101 carries. Do you know what's the most yards he's rushed for in a single game this year?
It's not 100.
76 yards in a game. That's the 49, 41, 42, 53 on 11, 13, 17 some carries. What is going on there? It is bad. They are ranked 124th out of 133 teams in FBS football in rushing yards per game.
Yeah, he's not been good. Won the Tyler Rose Earl Campbell Award last year, which was cool to see that just from being a little bit a part of it. And people loved him, and he had an awesome year, and obviously the Doak Walker and all of that as well. Couldn't have seen this coming, although I will say now, in hindsight, we didn't talk about this at the time. And I'm not saying that this is the reason why things aren't going well, because clearly it's not an Ollie Gordon only issue. It's not like Alan Bowman's throwing 3-4 touchdowns a game, and if only they had a run game to complement this incredible aerial attack. Like, it's not that. The offensive line's not blocking, and they're not on the verge of winning the Joe Moore Award right now. Like, the defense is not doing anything to help you at the moment. So they have more problems than Ollie Gordon. But do y'all remember the kind of attitude around Big 12 Media Days?
Oh, yeah.
He had a guy with him that I guess was his agent, and there was just a different feel to it. And we didn't talk about it at the time because it's like there wasn't really a reason to. Avery Johnson had his girlfriend there, and I think he had a representative or so, at least it appeared that way, that was walking him around. So it wasn't like Ollie was the only guy. But Ollie had like a person or two that was with him, and it just felt very much like a guy who'd had a big year is now dabbling with an agent in this NIL era. And I remember a couple people saying like, that's kind of interesting. And then I remember talking to somebody who had dealt with Ollie and talked about like having to talk to a representative and just how it was all sort of strange. And there's a lot of guys out there that have reps now. Like they have to because of NIL deals and everything like that. But, yeah, I just remember that. And you look back on it now, you're like, huh. Like that's just interesting to look back on and wonder, does the business side have anything to do with the structure? You know what I mean? Like, is just the focus was not quite, like, I don't know. But you look back on that now and you're like, yeah, he was a little bit caught up in the whole agent thing and having a hangers on. And I get that when you're on Super Bowl Radio Row, but not when you're a college football player. It's just still new to us to see that. And so I look back on that now, and maybe it has nothing to do with anything. I don't know.
And again, like one of the other things is that you have to have a little bit of humility in that he had a great season. He won a lot of awards.
Jeez, yeah.
But how many great seasons has Ollie Gordon had? One. Yeah, I mean, just...
And if any of all that other stuff you're talking about, Craig, is true, and of course your facts, data, evidence, you wonder how some of the NFL scouts will think about this.
Well, and the reason that we all fawn over people at Radio Row, like when Emmitt Smith or Barry Sanders or somebody like walks in and we all run to get interviews with them, it's because they stacked a bunch of those in a row.
Yeah, no, they did it. Yeah. No, those guys all had like 1,000 yards, 8 to 10, 12 years in a row. Yeah.
So I will ask this to Ollie Gordon. Do you want to be the guy who, when your interview opportunities come up, people run to you, or when they come and you go, would you like to go Ollie Gordon? And we go, you know what? That'd be fun. Sure, we got time. Sure, bring him on over.
Yeah, he's one of those we just get. Here's a note. I just got this on my Twitter feed from Michael Penny. Michael, thank you. So this weekend you have Georgia, Texas. That in itself is a monstrous deal. Eminem and Sting are in concert this weekend in Austin, and so is Formula One. That by itself is a huge deal. The average, and this is from Michael Penny, the average hotel room cost for one night, guess.
$800.
Craig, I know. I just
$1,000. I don't know.
$1,600.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Now, you could have gotten one for $189 at a Sheraton or maybe $358 at someone. I mean, $1,600. Some of it because, of course, supply and demand, and also because they can't. F1, Formula One at the Circuit of the Americas. Game day also is going to be there. UT Georgia, Sting, and M&M. What a weekend in Austin, Texas.
What would your first choice be? I know what Craig's is.
Yeah, I'm going Slim Shady.
Yeah.
M&M, probably for me it would be Sting.
Yeah.
I mean, when I've worked out or I've had to run, and I don't get to run at all now pretty much, I would listen to Eminem. Yeah. I would listen to Eminem. Such intense, high throttle beat to it, and I would listen to him. But yeah, what would you want to do? Eminem?
Oh, Eminem for
Garrett?
sure.
Honestly, I would go to the game.
Well, there you go.
I would.
Yeah.
I'd go to the game first.
Okay, so we'll have Sam Kahn coming up next. There's a couple other nuggets. AD now. Pittsburgh has their AD. We'll have that plus much more. Sam Kahn from theathletic.com is next. And this is 365 Sports.
PettyClinicLowT.com can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be. Hi, this is David Smoak. As you get older, usually upper 30s, but most likely in your 40s and eventually the 50s, when you get your testosterone checked, 1 out of every 3 or 4 men have low testosterone levels. It's part of father time. It's just living life. And that clock starts to tick. Maybe you're fortunate it doesn't have any effect on you. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be. Tell them I sent you. They will set you up to get your blood work. If they get the results Dr. Petty does, he'll look at them, and then if you need testosterone boost, he can put you in a program to increase your testosterone levels so you can become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be. PettyClinicLowT.com.
It's Ram Power Days at Allen Samuels in Waco. Get ready to rule the road in a brand new 2024 Ram 1500 with an amazing 20% off MSRP. Or drive away with 0.9% financing for 72 months. Don't miss out on unbelievable savings. It's all happening right now at Allen Samuels.
Come by. Let's be friends.
Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Ghost Hydration is a fully transparent, fully loaded, full-flavored hydration drink that we've all been waiting for. Ghost is caffeine-free with electrolytes, 0 sugar, and low sodium that'll hydrate your body before, during, and after your workout. Consumer loved with authentic flavors, so grab and enjoy a Sour Patch Kids Blue Raspberry and Red Berry, along with the Kiwi Strawberry, Orange Squeeze, or Lemon Lime. Ghost Hydration can truly be used anytime. Remember, it's formulated for sports, but made for life.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
When you work with a bank, you should expect the best of everything. That includes face-to-face personal service and the kind of community banking care that only comes from one neighbor to another. That's exactly what you'll get from the First National Bank of Central Texas, where you will know your banker works just as hard as you do. Once again, that's the First National Bank of Central Texas. Settle for nothing less than the first. Member FDIC.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
365 Sports. Appreciate those of you who are watching us in 3 different ways. One, at 365 Sports YT on Twitter. Also on Sikkim 365 app, and then the YouTube channel, 365 Sports here, which is where we are, and we broadcast from our studio in Waco, Texas. All right, Sam Kahn, theathletic.com, who's here. Sam, have I ever not texted you on a day in which I was on the show to let you know that we were on you were on our show?
No, you've always done it every time, and I think you didn't do it today. And I'm not blaming you because I have it on my calendar. And today it's a very beautiful day. I was outside, and it just totally slipped my mind. So I share in the responsibility.
Okay,
here.
Good. Here's the thing, Sam. Usually, as you know, on Fridays it's me alone. Like when you're here, they're doing high school football. They have a bye week this week, so they're here. And wrecking our party on Friday. So he was trying to blame me, but I'm glad that this is a three pronged.
He
thing.
forgot to remind you.
I did totally forget,
which is what we do. And so Sam, it's good. You got a game. Which game are you covering? Or are you just kind of watching all of them?
I am not at a game this weekend. We actually have Chris Fanini and Seth Emerson will be at Texas, Georgia. I've been on the road the last 2 weekends, so I really could use a weekend not on the road. So I'll be just kind of monitoring all of it and looking forward to it.
All right, well, let's discuss Texas and OU. And, of course, we'll get into the Big 12 games too, and there's some other ones around the country. But Texas hasn't been pushed because they've been good. Michigan wasn't quite who they – of course, way down from last year. They just routed Oklahoma. Your thoughts about them? Do you see any weaknesses, or do we not know, and we may not even know this weekend?
Yeah, that's the thing about Texas. And I've talked to a few coaches. We did a Coaches Confidential this morning on the Texas-Georgia game where I talked to 4 coaches and asked for their thoughts about these teams. And that's the sentiment that has been interesting to me, is that there really aren't very many weaknesses on this Texas team. Now, you're right. They have not been tested because Michigan really didn't have a passing game. Oklahoma's passing game was very underwhelming because they were starting a true freshman quarterback. So that secondary, which right now I think is number 1 in the country in fewest explosive plays allowed, hasn't really been tested by somebody of the caliber that Carson Beck will. That said, when you watch them, even independent of competition, I'm a believer that even if the competition is not good, if you've watched enough ball, you can tell which teams really are good regardless of the level of competition they're playing and which ones are just getting by on their schedule. And I think I look at Texas as a team that I think is very good from top to bottom, regardless of who they played. Now, if I'm looking for weaknesses or things that could pop up, I'm looking at running back, where they have been nicked up a little bit throughout this season. Of course, they lost a couple guys before the season. The depth there is just not there. I think their talent is there. I think Trey Wisner has emerged really well, and that game last week against Oklahoma was big, but they're just not super deep. Jaden Boo's been in and out of the lineup. Trey Wisner got hurt a little bit. They've got true freshman Jared Gibson. They've had to move Ryan Niblett over there. So that's one spot that I look at. The other spot that I'm curious to see is the interior defensive line. Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins have been terrific this year. The rotational guys they brought in have been really solid. They're not as dynamic as Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy are, but right now they don't have to be because Texas is winning with putting points on the board. They're winning by rushing the passer, and they're doing a good job against the run. They're not as dominant, but they play within the system, and they do what they're supposed to do. So I'll be curious if Georgia wants to really run at them and hand the ball to Trevor Etienne and those big backs that are hard to bring down, can they answer the bell? That I'd be curious to see that this weekend.
Sam, tonight, BYU and Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is headed in the wrong direction. They start Garrett Rangel at quarterback tonight. Zane Flores didn't make the trip. This is not the city you want to be in and the team you want to play when you're trying to pick yourself up off the mat. Is this Mike Gundy looking to next season?
If you're not competitive here in this spot, and I wonder when you're going to be. But that said, we talked about this before with K-State when K-State had to go over there. You go all the way to Provo for a night game, and as charged up as that crowd is and as tough as that home field atmosphere is to play in, it's a tough spot, especially to make a first start. But I think the move at quarterback and making the change and all that stuff, I think it's time. And I think you guys have talked about this on the show a little bit yesterday with Utah, with Cam Rising and that injury. And that it's maybe just time to kind of move on. I think that's kind of the same thing with Bowman. And obviously with Zane Flores out, going to Rangel, I think is going to be an intriguing thing to watch. But this team has just so many issues beyond that position. And I just want to see some fight. I want to see some fight, and I want to see some execution if you're Oklahoma State. At BYU, on the other hand, I love what they've been defensively. I think Jake Retzloff has done a good job as a quarterback and has made some plays. Overall, I think this is a solid team. And to me, if you're really to be considered one of the favorites to win this conference, which is they're in the position in the standings, then you take care of business and you win this game.
Sam, often when the Big 12 is talked about now, it's Iowa State, BYU, and some might have a different order there. And then K-State's pretty much the automatic number 3. I think after that, you could say Arizona State maybe, but Texas Tech. I mean, they're looking at a likely win tomorrow against Baylor at home. We'll see if they finish it out, but there's every reason to believe that they will. And they'd be 6-1, man. At what point do you start to say, like, this isn't just a schedule thing or a whatever thing? Like, we need to start mentioning them with K-State and BYU and Iowa State.
Yeah, I want to see more consistency on the defensive side of the ball, and we're starting to get it. When we talked about them early in the year and how porous they were on defense, how many explosives they were giving up, and they were still able to win some ball games. Of course, the Wazoo game, they did not. But that was the thing that I think bothered me. But you look at them now, and even though the numbers aren't great defensively, in the red zone, they're pretty good. On third downs, they're pretty good. On takeaways, they're pretty good in conference play. So these last few weeks, they started to get a groove defensively. If you can keep doing that and you can keep Taj Brooks healthy, then I think this is a team that you have to consider as a conference title contender. I do want to see them win games a little more convincingly. They've all these three last wins that they've had, I think, are all by one score, and they've got this amazing record. What is it, 11-3 in one possession games in the Joey McGuire era? That's really impressive. Can they keep that up? You have to wonder at some point, does that come back to bite them? But if they go in and they handle Baylor by 2 or 3 touchdowns, then I'm convinced they're a team to watch down the stretch.
Yeah, they were fortunate. They played with their food a little bit. And obviously Cincinnati's a pretty good football team, but they played with their food a little bit. And, of course, they were able to, like, clear that Washington State disaster up in Pullman, no matter if Brooks played or not. But they do seem to I don't know this for a fact, but the teams that have been winning the Big 12 titles the last 3 to 5 years and maybe forever have been teams that have won the one-score games. TCU, my God, remember that year, and Baylor in 21.
Yeah, TCU is the one that you think about, really, because how many of those games came down to the wire? You guys remember the one in McLean Stadium where with the fire drill field goal. Oh, yeah. I mean, that was one of the most amazing innings I've ever seen. And so you're right. And I think because of the nature of this conference and how competitive it is from top to bottom, you do have to win a lot of close games. Even Texas last year, who won it, they had to tough one out against Houston. They had to tough one out against K-State. They had a one-score game that they lost against Oklahoma. So that's just the nature of this league. The spreads are not going to be really large. You're not going to have, like you get in the SEC, where you get the number one team against the last team, and it's a 45-point spread sometimes. You're not going to get that. And you're just going to have to tough out some games. And for however they've made it work, Texas Tech has figured out a way to do that in the first 3 years of the Joey McGuire era.
Sam, West Virginia up against it this week, too. I mean, they've got to start winning some games. They're still very much in the conference race. They only have one conference loss, but the fan base is starting to turn on Neil Brown. And
as in flying a banner saying fire Neil Brown.
Yeah, they're starting to turn on him. And Kansas State comes in last week after a really, really nice win in coming back and winning on the road against Colorado.
Yeah, it's not going great, and the fans are upset when they're parsing your press conference comments. When Neil Brown said the whole thing about, I hope they had a great time, like, that really infuriated the fans. And when you reach that point, buddy, you're in trouble. So this is a huge spot for them, obviously. And you look at if they can get through this game, you look at the rest of the next few weeks. Arizona on the road, that's a really long road trip, but that's an Arizona team that has not played great. So you think, hey, can you win that one? At Cincinnati is going to be tough, but you got Baylor, you got UCF. So you got a chance, if you're West Virginia, to pick up some momentum if you can squeeze out a win here this week, or at least be competitive and at least play down to the wire with this K-State team down the stretch. But they just have been inconsistent. Garrett Green's numbers aren't there. The turnovers have been an issue. They've got to tighten those things up, because that, to me, when I watched them last year, when they went 9-4, he was the guy. He was the straw that stirred the drink for them. He's so tough. He kind of a devil may care attitude. When you watch him play, he just kind of throws caution to the wind, and you love that about him. But that can come back to bite you if you don't take care of the football.
Biggest game in the country this week is obviously Georgia, Texas, but also Alabama, Tennessee. We know there's no love lost there whatsoever. Sam, they've both kind of had some up and down performances at this point this year. Tennessee very fortunate last weekend against Florida. Your thoughts on a borderline top 10 matchup here between the Vols and Tide?
Yeah, I look at this one as more of a pressure game for the Tide. I feel like every game now after the loss is a pressure game for the Tide, because we're in uncharted territory, because the Kalen DeBoer is not going to get the benefit of the doubt that Nick Saban did. And so even after beating South Carolina last week, because it was as close and came down to the wire in the way it did, Crimson Tide fans are just kind of clenching their teeth because they're used to dominating. And so every game from here on out, to me, I don't think it's fair that it's this way, but it's just the way it is. It's going to be a referendum on Kalen DeBoer. I mean, we got to the point where after the loss 2 weeks ago to Vanderbilt, that they're critiquing the guy's wardrobe, like what he's wearing.
Yeah.
How dare he wear a t-shirt on the sideline? And I'm like, buddy, this is for everybody who ever told you about what it was going to be like when the successor Nick Saban came in and how crazy people were going to get when they lost the game. I think we're getting even beyond that. But this is obviously a big game that's got playoff implications as well for both of these teams. I still give Alabama a little bit of an edge, just because I'm going to trust in Jalen Milroe, big game experience, big game player. Nico, I think, is super talented, but I just don't think he's all the way there yet. He's only started, I think, is it 9 games that he started? He's still a young quarterback. He's still not all the way matured into the level. So I think this is not a situation like with Vanderbilt where you were going against a veteran quarterback in Diego Pavia, a guy who knew the system. This is a younger quarterback who hasn't had as many of these experiences. So I kind of give Alabama the edge in that way, just because I think Milroe and all those playmakers. And for anybody who hasn't watched them, I'm sure you guys have, but for anybody who hasn't watched Alabama this year, go watch Ryan Williams. Golly, that guy is incredible to watch.
I saw the story on the front page of one of the websites. He should be in high school.
He's 17,
Yeah, he should be in high school. And here he is, as good a receiver as there is in the country. Paul?
Sam, A&M plays Mississippi State this week. They have been really good. Connor Wegman came back and was fantastic against Mizzou. They were off, and then now they're back to action. This has not been the most favorable series to A&M. I think 8-8 all time. And of those 8 losses, especially the ones that have come since they've joined the SEC, they're always at the worst time. This one is there. Mississippi State is playing with an untested quarterback and kind of held their own for a minute against Georgia last week. Is this the definition of trap game for a confident Aggies team?
100%, because you got LSU on the other end coming to Kyle Field in 2 weeks. So, or week and a half, I should say. This is a game that 2 weeks ago last week when they beat Mizzou the way they did, I looked at it and I thought, man, A&M's going to go in there and cruise and dominate Mississippi State because we know how bad they look. And then you watch how Michael Van Buren and that offense looked against Georgia. They were hitting shots downfield. They were winning one-on-ones against Georgia's DBs, which Georgia has elite secondary players. This is a Mississippi State team that A&M cannot afford to take lightly, because now you're halfway into the season. Your freshman quarterback has started a few games now that Chapin's been out, and I think they're starting to at least understand and build some confidence and understand what they're doing. That's part of the thing with the transition. Same thing we saw with Houston. Houston struggled so mightily in their first few weeks, and then they got the win against TCU. It takes a little time. I think we take that for granted, especially in the portal era when you've got so many players who are new. Now that they've kind of figured out, you build some confidence by going toe-to-toe with one of the top teams in America, and it's Starkville, and it's all those cowbells. It's the SEC road environment. And like you said, I remember 2016, I think it was, Texas A&M was number 4 in the playoff rankings in the first week of the rankings unveil. And then that very Saturday, they went to Starkville, and they got beat by, I think it was Nick Fitzgerald, and their playoff hopes went down the tubes. So this is a huge spot. And to me, if you're A&M and you go take care of business and you dominate, you go into that LSU game with a lot of momentum. And now I think people are talking about you as a dark horse playoff team.
Sam, if you don't mind, it's a college athletics question. The Tony Bennett retirement at Virginia, and he had his press conference. There's been, there's people looking at both sides. One, thank God it's not health-related, but, man, this kind of sucks on the eve of the season. We've maybe seen a college coach or two leave a little bit early. But this timing was so bizarre. Like somebody said, basketball hasn't changed since he signed his new deal in June and players entered the portal to join his squad. What were your thoughts about this one?
Yeah, I think just like a lot of these things, there's a lot of nuance to it. My gut reaction is, yeah, it's really sucks for the players because they're locked in because you're already in school. So you're not going to be able to transfer somewhere else before the season starts. We're very close to the season starting. And I think he said it, at least from the press conference quotes that I saw on social media earlier, it sounded like he wanted to give his assistant the best chance at the job. I get that, and I respect that loyalty to your guys, but you are not the athletic director. You are not the one to make that decision. Yes, this is your basketball program because you coach it, but this is Virginia basketball. This is not Tony Bennett basketball.
There you go.
So I think while I understand why he did it, and I certainly empathize and I understand trying to do right by your coaches and your staff, it puts the kids in a bad position and it puts the administration in a tough spot because you're essentially forcing their hand the way you wanted to. Now, I will say this. If you truly thought that you're done and you just don't have it in you to do it, it's unfair to stay and it's unfair to keep coaching the kids because if you're not in it, you want to give as much as you're getting paid, you need to give 100% of yourself to that job and to those players and the rest of your staff. If you're not able to do that, step away. But yeah, I don't love the timing of it because of what it does to the kids, but I'd rather you be upfront and be honest about it and tell us what you're trying to do. And I'm not a fan of it, but I also understand where he's coming from.
Yeah, and he said that. He did bring that up. He just didn't feel like he could continue with the way things are. But, hey, it's his career. He can make that decision, but a lot of people are affected by that, as you mentioned. Sam, great stuff. Enjoy being able to just with all 7 of those flat screens in front of you on your man cave, enjoy all of them. It's great to always have you on the show. We appreciate you, man. Love the work you do.
Thank you so much, guys. Y'all take care.
Sam Kahn, theathletic.com, with us on 365 Sports. In a minute, we'll hear from Grayson Gruner. There are a couple of quarterback decisions that were released, at least so far today. Ja'Kurrie Brown will start at UCF. Gus Malzahn making that announcement. And former Baylor commit Zach Pyron, the kid from Alabama, is going to start for Georgia Tech. Haynes King will not play in their game coming up this weekend. All right, when we come back, Grayson Gruner, we have a few other nuggets to get to and a lot of other guests to get to. We appreciate your time. This is 365 Sports.
Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. It's that time of year, it's football season. Bird Colgan Ford is a proud supporter of the best high school football right here in Central Texas. BK Ford is proud to sell the #1 selling truck in Texas, the F-Series truck, 47 years in a row. Come see the largest showroom in Texas and experience better at Bird Colgan Ford. Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
It's football and tailgate season. If you want product for the grill or smoker, charcoal, season these marinades, sauces, Waco Custom Marketplace is your home to help prep, cook, and enjoy your food. Tailgate muscle, brisket, tri-tip, fresh-made burgers, sausage, chicken wings, and if you want steaks, call in your order and pick them up. Bacon wrap fillets or any kind of ribeyes. USDA Select, Choice, and Prime that melt in your mouth. House-made sausage and jerky. Also, Waco Custom Marketplace, a one-stop shop for tailgating, barbecue, cook-offs, and family get-togethers, fundraisers with fair prices to you, the customer. A bakery with fresh baked bread and kolaches. There's cold beer, wine, and soft drinks. Serving Waco restaurants and families since 1940. A cut above the rest. Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend's Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Segments about Baylor football brought to you by Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac. Thanks to Richard Carr, Richard Golf. Thanks to Lance Aldridge, Richard Carr on the Loop, Highway 6 and Imperial Drive. One note before we get to Grayson. Last night, Virginia Tech beat Boston College 42-21. Kyron Drones, 14 of 18, 164 yards, had a touchdown, threw a pick, had 2 touchdowns rushing, but Bashaw Tootin was huge in that game. 266 yards, 3 touchdowns, and also caught a touchdown pass for Virginia Tech and the Hokies. So good for Kyron Drones. We're now joined by Grayson Gruner, 365 Sports, SicEm365.com. Now, Grayson, we all do these predictions, and you're out there on this, wire predicting Baylor. Do you just feel like eventually the numbers, the percentages will be they're going to win a game?
I do. I think there's a little bit more nuance to it than that, though. I mean, Baylor's been in most of the games that they've played so far this year, and I understand the thought process behind, but they lost those games. So that trend is going to continue, and it's been a trend that has, frankly extended basically 2.5 seasons. And so I definitely understand why there's not a lot of confidence in it, but I think if you just kind of look at not just how this game lays out, but also kind of what Baylor has done leading up to this point, where they've had to go on the road to Colorado in a night game. They've had to go on the road to Ames in a night game. They've had to go on the road to Utah in a game in which they had Cam Rising, at least for the beginning of it. And I think all of those kind of tests, really kind of set you up well to at least go on the road and perform up to your capabilities, because they've done it before. They've been in those situations and had time to try to adjust and get better. And then the other part of it is, they had a bye week. And I know people will say, well, Texas Tech has a bye week. But I think it's much different when a 2-4 team has a bye week than a 5-1 team having a bye week. Tech is in a good spot. They're just trying to build on what they've already done this year, whereas Baylor is trying to do everything they can to turn the season around and win a football game. And so for that reason, I feel like this is a good spot. I think this is a good spot for Baylor to play a complete game of football, which has not been something that they've been doing at a very high rate at all, but it just feels that way. And it also feels like a matchup where their offense should at least feel pretty comfortable, given that Tech is the worst Power 4 defense they will face or have faced so far this year. And they're not a great pass rushing team. And there's just going to be a lot of opportunities in my eyes for Soyer Robertson to make some throws down the field and connect with these wide receivers.
Grayson, Taj Brooks, as he goes, so goes that Tech offense. And Baylor had a hell of a time with him last year. Do you think they'll be more successful this year?
I think they better be if they want to have a chance to win this game. I think in general, you go and look at kind of how Tech has done this year, and he didn't play in the Washington State game. I personally don't think they were winning that game even with him. That was not a very competitive football game. But I do think that if you look at their other games, you look at Arizona State and you look at Arizona, which were the two teams that actually played the best defense so far against Tech outside of Washington State. what they did a good job of was they limited Taj Brooks' number of carries. They limited his yards per carry, and just total yardage in general. They kept him below that 140-yard mark. And if you're able to do that, you're going to put yourself in a decent place to win this type of football game, because what Tech does so well is they don't put their passing game in tough situations. You're running the ball well on first down. You're running the ball well on second down. You're getting yourself in these positions where it's 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, 4th and 1. And those are very advantageous positions for an offense, and especially a passing game and a quarterback to be in. And they really rely on that. And I think it's been something that's been kind of a secret sauce for them that has worked, because Taj Brooks is so good. And so I do think, this is going to be a game where Baylor's really going to have to focus on that. And I would be surprised if that really wasn't the focal point of their game plan, because I think in general for Baylor to have success in this one, or at least to give themselves the best chance, I truly do think they're going to have to make Baron Morton beat them. And he can. He's proven it at times, but I also think he's proven at times to be a little inconsistent and erratic when he's put in positions where he has to go out and try to win a football game for Tech.
Of the 2 weeks to get healthy, the guys that could be coming back, expected to come back, or maybe guys who have been beat up and have been playing but maybe are a bit healthier, who do you think stands to stand out and make the biggest impacts or the biggest additions?
The two biggest ones that come to mind are for two different reasons, I guess. So Caden Jenkins coming back from the concussion that he suffered a couple weeks ago is massive, and he has not had a good year. Like, you can look at any metric you want. He has not played up to the level that they need him to play at. And this feels like kind of the perfect time to get him back, and hopefully for him to turn his season around that has been a little bit disappointing up to this point. But we know the kind of playmaker Caden can be. He can be an absolute game breaker. We saw it against UCF last year, saw it at other times last year as well, where he just flashed as a true freshman. And then the other guy that I'm looking at is also a younger guy, and that's Carl Williams. I think people kind of forget about him a little bit because he hasn't had a great start to the year, in part due to this injury that he's been trying to come back from and get back to 100%. But this was a guy that was, they took him to Big 12 Media Days. The Baylor staff thinks he's going to be, or was going to be, one of the best defense players on this team, if not the best secondary player, at least on this team. And he just hasn't been right. And so I think this week off could be huge for him. And notice I'm mentioning two guys in the secondary because, again, I do think that's the area where I think this game might be won, at least from a defensive standpoint. They're going to have to be able to force pass breakups, potentially get turnovers, and just make life hard for Baron Morton in the secondary. So those two guys definitely come to mind.
I asked Phil Bennett this earlier in the week, and we asked Seth Russell this yesterday, that with things that aren't going well, there's been a little bit of this, but they have a really good class of 2025. And with the transfer portal, those national signing day things, they're still important, don't get me wrong, but they're not the end all. Can Baylor University, the athletic department, if this team continues to go off the rails, can they be held hostage because they happen to have what is one of the highest ranked classes if they finish and sign them in a long time?
I really don't see that happening. Now, that may be more of a personal opinion, but I do think that there is a win threshold that needs to be met. And so whatever that number gets to, whatever that number is, I think it is going to have to be reached in order for a conversation to be had. I do think that the recruiting class was big for Dave Aranda and the staff. It gave them a lot of momentum in the offseason. But at the end of the day, this year was definitely about winning. And I mean, If you look at the transfers that they took, they brought in a lot of guys and they spent on a lot of guys and they put a lot of resources and time into that. And so I don't view this as being, oh, this is just a lost season. Let's go get them next year. I don't think it's like that. I think it's really going to have to come down to, oh, Baylor was super competitive in the season, won a few more games and get to a point where they're, either in a bowl game. I think they need to be in a bowl game, but I know that's up for interpretation. But I do think that if they're 3-9 or 4-8, I find that incredibly hard to believe.
Grayson, how has the recruiting ridden the wave of this season so far, especially coming up into this critical midpoint of the season?
I actually had an article on Sikkim 365 this past week, giving some reactions from Baylor commits throughout the midway point of the season. And so a lot of them gave quite good responses. Most of them talked about how the team looks improved and they're a few plays away from being 4-2, and they just have to find ways to finish games, and all of these different factors are what these guys have talked about. But pretty much all of them continue to say the same thing, that they're locked in and committed to Baylor, which is great. There are a few that are on the fence. I know, Caleb Burns, the Cy Falls 4-star linebacker, he took a trip to Oregon this past weekend, and I think he's going to Oklahoma this upcoming weekend for a visit as well. So that one is certainly up in the air. And there's a few others that I think are, maybe looking around. But in general, I think Baylor's done a really good job of, they gave guys expectations for this year and told guys the honest truth about the season and where they were at and also where they were heading. And I think in general, this class and even some of the 2026 commits as well, they really believe in the vision that Dave Aranda has. But again, they got to win football games. They got to put complete games together, which has been really tough to find over the course of the last 2 years.
You guys have a chance to visit. I know you didn't have an assistant on staff today, this week, but you get a chance to visit with them. And I'm sure you nibble on the text. I get a couple of texts or try to as well. What's the mood, in your opinion, among the assistant coaches?
Oh, among the assistants. That's a good question. I would say that I think in general, this is more of a team standpoint and a team question. I think the team is still very bought in to where Baylor is at and bought into the fact that this team is far better than their record shows. And this goes from the coaches, from the top down, right? From the head coach all the way down through the lineup, the roster, the guys who are playing, the guys who aren't playing. There is definitely a level of this season's not going as we planned, and we're a lot better than this. And I firmly believe that everyone in that building still believes in that and thinks that. And so the key thing that's going to come down to now is just, can you put it all together? Can you actually turn these things around? And if they're able to do that, then, maybe there's good things to come. But if not, I think it's going to be a team that, kind of trying to just, again, find itself, right? And hopefully they did that over the bye week. But we'll see. It's to be determined as they go to Lubbock on Saturday.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate being a part of the show. Grayson Gruner writes a ton about recruiting, but also other things with the football team too, with Sikkim365.com and with us as in all three of us this Friday, Craig and me, invading the space of Paul Catalina and Garrett Ross on this Friday afternoon. When we come back, we have yet more, a bunch of other college football. Peyton Soyer. That is what you put on dumplings.
Yeah.
Soy sauce.
That's actually how he
From rankingsrightnow.com. He'll join us. First time I've had a chance to visit with him. Connor O'Gara, Kenneth Davis, Josh Neighbors, Paul's Top 5 and more. If you haven't, please do hit the like button, or if you haven't subscribed, we'd appreciate you doing that too. This is 365 Sports. TexasBeefHouse.com. Another live auction, 3 times. This will be the third one in October, coming up on the 23rd and 24th, which is next week. I have what they're going to have in the auction, and a lot of times this may change. It may be more heavy towards ground beef or hamburger patties, but here we go. Wagyu filet, Wagyu ribeye, Wagyu New York strip. Let's see. Top sirloin, Denver steaks. All this is Wagyu. Let's see here. Skirt steaks, flank steaks, flap steaks. All of this available. Roast, and I got a Wagyu roast, a 7-pounder. It's a dude. And I was able to put that in the crock pot and really enjoyed it, and eventually put it in the oven for it to bake a little bit more with potatoes and carrots. It was absolutely delicious. Tri-tip available. And then they have Angus options for all of what I just mentioned too. The ground beef, the hamburger patties, coming up October 23rd and 24th next week. You do 2 things. Go to TexasBeefHouse.com, or you can go to bidonbeef.com. That will also be available if you go to TexasBeefHouse.com. Use 365 Sports and get $25 off the $100, your first $100 purchase when you order. The Duvall family, right outside of Tyler, Texas, the Duvall family Angus Cattle Ranch. It's unbelievable product and available You get to pay what you want to pay for whatever it is with beef and product at TexasBeefHouse.com.
Announcing Genco's Car Hugger Special. Right now, refinance your auto loan at Genco and get 3 months of no car payments. Plus, your loan will be automatically entered for a chance to win your next 3 car payments on us. Enjoy 5.19% for 48 months and then skip your payments until 2025. Subject to credit approval and membership eligibility. For more information, go to GencoFCU.org. Member NCUA.
Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Welcome back, 365 Sports. Our good friend Peyton Soyer joins us now, and Craig and Smokey get to experience Peyton for the first time. So you get the full meal deal, Peyton, and you've been stuck with just me for all these weeks.
It's about time. I know you've been hiding me over in the corner. It's time to release me.
Yeah, this is the varsity schedule now, Peyton.
There we go.
We're going to find out all that other non-district preseason stuff. No, great to have you, and I'm glad we're able to be a part of it. Heard some great things about you from the chat room, but also with Paul. Paul, show us how it works.
Okay, so Peyton, first off, before we start to get into games this week, how did you come out last week in a week that was, man, it was tense, like watching things and close games? Like we talked at length last week about Ohio State and Oregon. It was a 1-point Oregon win, so not much was going to change there on either side.
Right, like that was the game that we were all paying attention to, and that really had the biggest implication of what those top rankings were going to be looking like. And the model was almost perfect through the top 7. So it was perfect on Texas, Oregon, and Penn State, and then a couple of switches between Ohio State and Georgia, Miami, Alabama. Each of those were one off. For the most part, through the top 15, and what we've seen through this algorithm, especially the AP poll algorithm, is those top 15 can be pretty accurate. And usually there's one or two that has a little bit of a surprise. This week, it was Iowa State that the algorithm was just not prepared for them to be a top 10 team yet. They had them a little bit down. The algorithm had them at 13. But for the most part, seeing that really fun setup to say, hey, Oregon's going to be the number 2 team if they can beat Ohio State. You heard it here first on 365 Sports. That was exactly what ended up happening. So overall, very happy with what we've seen so far. And, to be honest, the AP algorithm has a little bit more of aggressive swings, especially in those schools that are already in like that 10 to 15 area. But we have, starting next week, starting to move over to a new algorithm, which is the College Football Selection Committee poll algorithm, which to me, that I've been peeking at over on the side, seems a lot more stable and a lot more interesting. But if you take a look at both algorithms, they're pretty much the same in the top 10. The AP poll seems to have it right on with what the College Football Selection Committee is going to come out with here in about a week and a half. So,
Peyton, this week, there are some big boys, Georgia and Texas, and Alabama and Tennessee. The algorithm has Tennessee taking a huge tumble if they lose to Alabama.
And that was exactly what I was talking about it has those aggressive swings. Now, I expect Tennessee not to take that big of a dive. However, USC, when losing to an unranked opponent, took a dive out of the top 25. This is a much more tense competition. I would expect them to be somewhere in that 18 to 23 range, maybe. That seems a little bit more realistic to me. That's something that during the offseason we can play around with a little bit and try and figure out how to get those, to reduce those big swings for those losses of those middle of the road teams. But overall, I don't think it's going to take that much of a tumble, but it's going to still be a pretty big hit.
So before we start asking, guys, get ready. But Georgia, you have only dropping down to 8. They would be 2 losses, and that would be ahead of undefeated Iowa State, 1 loss Clemson, undefeated BYU, 1 loss Notre Dame, and undefeated Indiana, and 1 loss Texas A&M.
It's a tough sell, but I just don't. I'm kind of leading with the algorithm here. It makes sense. By the way, if Georgia can win this game, it's going to make a really big shakeup for those top 5 teams. We have Oregon's going to be number 1. Georgia would then move up to 2. Penn State stays at 3. And, for that dropping to 8, it makes a little bit of sense to me. A lot of time we see on social media, it's like, oh, the SEC bias. Well, yeah, kind of. They're playing all these top teams. Texas hasn't had 5 seconds to breathe in between these games that they play every single week. They just play top-notch competition. And so I think they're just giving them the benefit of the doubt. And the algorithm is trying to say, hey, they're playing real competition. These other teams that have lost 1 or 2, it's not to teams that we believe are impressive. You have Alabama and Tennessee. I'm calling it the Slurpee Bowl, by the way. You have 7-11. You have to go right after that, right? Yeah. So if you have they have losses to unranked teams. Georgia would have a loss to Alabama, which is a top 10 team, and Texas, which has stayed number 1 for a majority of the season. I just don't see how you can say, well, we would rather put a 1-loss Texas A&M team over them when they're, it's just not the same competition at the end of the day.
All right, so what do we ask again?
Yeah, ask again.
Well, I've got one. Nebraska has lost 25 consecutive games to top 25 teams since 2016. It's about the time all hell broke loose, and they haven't been to a bowl game in a long time either. Indiana, red hot. Big Noon Kickoff is there. Cignetti's got a heck of a team. Nebraska's got a really nice defense, but boy, Indiana can make it happen.
I think that this is an enormous opportunity for Indiana. If we look at some of the algorithms that we were running, we have some simulations that really bring them into the top 10. If I do some math real quick, we're looking at something like 30% that they break into the top 10, which would be an enormous jump for them, especially that they were completely off the radar going into this game, or going into the season, I should say. So if they lose, though, they're dropping into the low 20s and a good percentage of the simulations that we run. And by the way, we run 10,000 simulations with a bunch of different scores and circumstances that try and give us the best overall picture of where these rankings might end up. But Indiana really has a great chance against an unranked Nebraska team. Now, I say unranked, but if you look at the latest AP poll, they were actually number 27 if you take all of the votes that come into account there. So taking advantage of this type of game for Indiana is enormous. And on that flip side, if I go ahead and just take a quick look at Nebraska, Nebraska has a good chance to break into the top 20. There's, you beat a Indiana team that everyone is on right now. There's a huge hype train around them, but this is kind of Nebraska's last big chance, as you kind of said, please prove to us that you can actually beat a serious contention or a good contender. So if Nebraska can come away with a win, which ESPN FBI is giving them a 25% chance of winning this game, if they can come away with a win, they're not just going to break into the top 25, but they're going to be considered a serious top 20 contender.
And then they have Ohio State on the road the next week, so they need this one, Craig.
Yeah, it might be fun for 5 minutes. Until then, you have to face them.
Peyton, BYU sitting there unbeaten. They're at number 13, projected to win a one-score game over on your site against Oklahoma State this weekend, who doesn't help them as they're not a ferocious competitor like you were talking about with the SEC. Oklahoma State is reeling right now. It doesn't appear, based on your site, that an Iowa State or a Kansas State can gain much from this weekend. But what could BYU potentially gain as they're banging on that top 10 door?
So according to our algorithm, we have BYU jumping up 2 slots to the number 11 ranking with a win this weekend. Now, as you mentioned, Oklahoma State, if you would have taken this game and moved it up in the year, right, kind of around that area where they played Kansas State in that night game, right, if you would have moved that up a little bit, I think BYU is maybe even considered a top 10 team. However, they happen to play Oklahoma State in a time where no one has any faith in them, right? The only game that they had that was their big game this year was against Utah. And ever since then, nothing has gone their way. So due to the fact that no one really has any real value to Oklahoma State's program right now in terms of rankings, there's not a lot to gain for BYU. Same thing with that you said with Kansas State, just no one's really moving. And I have to say, every single time we get one of these scenarios and I look at the prediction board and there's not that many arrows going, that's typically when we've had the craziest weekends of college football. So hopefully we can get a really interesting weekend, a couple of big upsets. We usually get 1 or 2, but this year with the transfer portal and whatever else you want to throw into the concoction of this season, every weekend's been a lot more crazier than I've remembered in seasons past. So right now, BYU only has a little bit of room because Clemson, Iowa State are projected to win. LSU's projected to win. Miami's projected to win. There's no more room to really move up. But if some of those teams get knocked out, you could see BYU maybe in an 8-9 ranking if they can get enough openings up at the top. Miami, for a good example, playing against Louisville. Miami's had a couple of really interesting games. If Louisville can kind of knock them out, I don't see Miami really being anywhere in that top 10. I think they would drop down to 15, 16 area. That opens a spot for BYU to move into top 10 category.
Miami has struggled the week before FSU classically, so that would be interesting. Although I don't know how worried they are this very season. Texas A&M plays Mississippi State. They're large favorites in this game, but also going to Starkville, Mississippi, has not been their favorite thing to do. Peyton, could you just run it if A&M loses this game, say 24-21 on a last-second field goal?
Sure. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick so I can show everyone, especially got to show the Smoak, everything that goes on with these fun simulations. But and I know we've had a couple technical difficulties today, but here, let's see if we can make it work. So we're in the what if simulation tool on rankings right now. We're going to go ahead and make sure that we're on the AP top 25 algorithm. We're looking at projected week 9 scores. And so can you rattle that off to me again, Paul, real quick, what you wanted that score to be?
Mississippi State 24, A&M 21.
Great. So we're going to go ahead and alter this 24 to 21. So as a reminder, we have the altered games right here, just as a quick reminder to make sure that you know exactly what games are being altered in this alternate reality. We're clicking run simulation. And now when we go ahead and jump into what we're seeing, we have Texas A&M dropping all the way down to 30. So that is a full catastrophic meltdown for Texas A&M. They gained all of that ground after the week 1 game against Notre Dame. You gotta, this one, especially with how much Mississippi State has struggled this year, you gotta really pull this one off, because that really knocks you out of contention and might completely ruin your entire shot at being in the top 12 conversation going into the college football playoff this year. So that's what we have right now with Texas A&M dropping all the way down to 30.
All right. So what is who's Colorado playing at Arizona? I'm not going to do that one. Let's find one of the West Virginia. So they're a team that they're out of it, the top 25. I don't see them entering the top 25 anytime soon, but they're playing at home and they need a win. And of course, they're playing at home against Kansas State, who had the big win against Colorado. How high can they go if K-State wins?
If K-State wins, how high can Kansas State go? So right here, if we go back, and we'll just go ahead and refresh this what if simulation. Go back here. I shouldn't have done that. I should have just clicked a separate button. But Kansas State right here is sitting at 17, right? Let's say it's a blowout win, right? I haven't played around with this one, so we'll see in real time, right? So let's say they do something crazy. Let's say they have something like 42-17, right? A really big convincing win. If we go ahead and run this simulation, let's see if that actually changes where they're going to be lined up. So up there, they moved to 15.
Yeah.
So there is definitely room if they can have a super convincing win in West Virginia. I think that's tough for any team, regardless of where West Virginia is in the current rankings. But Kansas State does have room to move up, but they're going to have to make it really convincing.
Does your simulator, and this is a fair, I think, legitimate question, does your simulator have any kind of way to eliminate the logos of where a team is in what conference?
Does it have the ability?
Does it say SEC? Does that mean an extra point or two? Does it say Big Ten?
No. It does not. So that's a really great question. So the only thing that we do for our simulations, and when we've built the simulations and try and think of what's the best approach to this, right? The toughest thing to do is preseason rankings, right? So you know where the top 25 sits because everyone, you can see it on the map. But what's 26, 27, 28, all the way down to 134, right? So where do you put the SEC in comparison to the ACC or the athletic or the American Athletic Conference? Like, where do you place those? So that's the only time that we actually set up to say we are going to put SEC schools kind of in this group of range. After that, it is straight up here versus here, and where does that usually move the schools, right? In the very beginning of the season, it's a little bit, obviously, no one really knows anything, so it's really all over the place. But now that we're getting a little bit closer and closer to the end of the year, you kind of know where the 50 schools are, where the 60 schools are, right? So there's nothing that says, well, if you're an SEC opponent, you're going to get more credit for this. The only thing that we include in these simulations is if it's an in-conference game. That does have an effect on how the AP poll does tend to vote, but we never say anything about what kind of conference they're in. It's just saying right now, this team is ranked here and this team is ranked here. In this scenario, when it's happened in the past, if this team wins, where do they typically move? And if this team loses, where do they typically move?
So, Peyton, is next week the time, because we're going to get those rankings, the first top 12 that, especially since it's never been done in this way before, that you've been kind of building to over the years now of building this website?
Yes, like this is the first time. I'm super excited about it. Like I said, who were we talking about earlier? Georgia's still falling to 8. But Tennessee dropping to 16 in the playoff committee rankings, right? That makes way more sense, I think, to a lot of us, right, than dropping all the way down to 25, right? This algorithm, which is trained off of playoff committee historical voting all the way back to 2014, I think is when they started, right? This is very, very consistent, and it doesn't have big swings. I'm very excited to see where we line up with the actual committee poll. We're going to go ahead and break it all down. We'll go ahead and look for where everyone's lined up, which teams are going to get bids, which teams are going to sneak in. It should be a lot of fun. But like we kind of mentioned, if you look at the top 10, there's not too much of a dissimilarity between what the AP poll is saying and what the College Football Selection Committee. I can only really see Iowa State and Notre Dame. I think Iowa State is ranked 9 right now. So those are really the only ones that are a little bit out. But if you look at it, it's pretty consistent top to bottom, but we have a little bit more of consistency, like, for example, Tennessee staying in the top 16. But if we look right now at the at all of the teams right there, here are the teams that are kind of hovering outside that might surprise some people. James Madison, we have projected as number 24, according to how we believe the college football committee tends to vote. Utah's still in the conversation. I think a lot of people have kind of pushed them out of the way. Navy's in there, Louisiana, Memphis. Here's Texas Tech and Syracuse, where a lot of people are screaming at the top of their lungs and those fan bases that we deserve to be ranked. The committee has them right on the border. So we're super excited to see where we line up compared to what the actual results are going to be.
Why did you bring him on? This is going to – I will go nuts with this stuff.
Yeah, I know. That's why I did.
That's by the way, an endorsement, Peyton.
Thank you. I was taking it as an endorsement. I was hoping it wasn't coming the other way. Yeah.
No.
It's a fun rabbit hole. You could go all day with this.
Oh, my Lord. Yeah. It to me, that's – by the way, fantastic. When did you come up with this idea and why?
So in 2021, I was watching Michigan State play Ohio State. My dad went to Michigan State, so I was born completely brainwashed into everything East Lansing does. It's amazing, right? So I'm watching this game. It was number 7 Michigan State versus number 4 Ohio State, I think in week 12. And at halftime, Ohio State was winning 49-0. So the season's over, right? There's no way, there's no coming back from this. The national championship contention is gone. And my wife, kind of as a joke, said, are they even going to be ranked in the top 50? And it kind of just like hit me of like, that's a great question. I wonder if anyone's even doing those kind of predictions. I looked and the answer was no. I have a computer science and mathematics like background. So I said, how hard could this be to put together? And it was hard, and it took a couple years until about February of this year is finally when I had the breakthrough of the algorithm of, I think this is close enough that I could share it with people. And college football fans would actually really enjoy to know this kind of information ahead of time.
Well, I think you're right, and it's obviously very well done, Peyton.
Thank you. I
very
appreciate
much
it
for your time. All right,
Peyton Soyer.
Yes, Peyton Soyer. And by the way, it's a hell of a guest. We look forward to having you on again.
I love it every week. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Peyton Soyer. With I just love numbers. And stuff like that to kind of play the games of what if and what happens if something does occur.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for his time.
And again, the website's rankingsrightnow.com, and you can fall down. It's free membership. You can fall down a rabbit hole. You can pay for one if you want, which would be lovely for Peyton because he's such a fantastic guest and a great guy. But yeah, it's free to start out, and you can go through and mess around however much you want.
Yep. Okay. Connor O'Gara's around the corner. Kenneth Davis, Big Ten country. Josh Neighbors on the Big 12, and then of course Paul's top 5 too. And we'll be back with more. This is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 and Highway 6, and a little bit east of Highway 84 in the Waco area. And they have a Sky One Touch top on a Wrangler offering major benefits of being able to easily open and close a large portion of the roof with just a push of a button, providing a convenient way to enjoy open-air driving while quickly adapting to changing weather conditions without needing to pull over, manually adjust the top, essentially combining the openness of a soft top with the ease of a hard top, making it perfect for those who want maximum versatility in their Wrangler experience. By the way, each Wrangler has trail-rated badge, which indicates the vehicle has been passing series upon series and tests of off-road tests, capable of handling tough terrain. Tests include off-road traction, maneuverability, articulation, ground clearance, and water fording. All of that with your, again, Wranglers at Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340, Highway 6, east of 84 in Waco.
Get ready, Baylor fans. The ultimate game weekend experience awaits you at the Baylor Club. Kick off your weekend with our Friday Night Live pep rally. With live entertainment and special appearances from the Baylor Spirit Squad, it's the perfect way to start your game weekend with a roar. On Saturdays, don't miss our Knox Hall tailgate. Enjoy delicious food, ice-cold drinks, and great company as you gear up for the big game. And after the weekend's excitement, wrap it all up with our famous Bear brunches on Sundays. Don't wait. Make your game weekends legendary with a Baylor Club membership today.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet. Over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
Guerra, Saturday Down South with us, and we missed him for a little while. He's in Florida. He's got kids, so that means that hurricanes and kids being bacteria magnets will slow down your life. So I do hope that this week has been normal for you, Connor.
It has been. Very thankful for that. You know, when you experience not only children getting sick and, being out of daycare, and you experience a hurricane on top of that, you just root for routine. And I am someone that loves to operate within a routine, operate very well within a routine, not so much outside of it. So yeah, glad to be back on normal circumstances talking to you.
Absolutely. Well, look, last week we got the most crazy week of college football maybe we've seen, like as far as scheduling, close games, overtimes, all of that. I don't know how much of it has reshaped the playoff picture that much, because some of the games, were teams who were probably on the outside looking in, but Ohio State and Oregon certainly did. Inside the SEC, I'm starting to have my doubts about Tennessee. I think everybody has their doubts about Alabama. What do you see as the SEC shakeup right now, now that Texas appears to be far and away the deepest team?
Yeah, Texas is in tier 1 in the SEC. I think that they have checked so many boxes. I mean, think about this. They've trailed for 3 minutes and 50 seconds this season. It was at the end of the first quarter into the second quarter last week against Oklahoma. And we know obviously how that game turned out. And yet they have allowed in 360 minutes of football, in which I guess, let me do some quick math. They've been leading or tied for 356 minutes and 10 seconds of that time. Yeah. And they've allowed 1 passing touchdown. That is just a lights out unit that has gone largely overlooked because we've been talking about the offense. We've been talking about Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning and this quarterback situation. But the defense, to me, being number 1 in scoring defense right now, number 1 in yards per play allowed, like they have just been everything that you could have hoped for if you were a Texas fan coming into the SEC. And that'll be on full display on Saturday night against Georgia, who, look, I think Georgia is in this big tier 2 in the SEC. It's a tier 2 that probably includes Tennessee. It probably maybe includes an LSU. Who knows if it includes Alabama or Ole Miss, but it just feels like a lot of those teams, they're really interchangeable, and just wait a week and it'll probably change. I mean, Arkansas and Vandy have already beat top 5 teams this year. That's what we're talking about, the chaos and perhaps the parity in the SEC this season.
With that parity and a lot of transfer portal, NIL, they're like, the biggest thing is you could, if you were in Alabama or Georgia, you could have guys that were just waiting in the wings that were 5 stars. But if you lose 3 of them to different places, they don't necessarily help somebody else win a national title. They kind of hurt them being as deep, so that when you have 2 guards out like they do at Alabama right now, when you have some of the depth, that you don't have at Georgia, it changes things where you just can't go, oh, well, as a bummer that this year's first-round draft pick is out, but next year's first-round draft pick is ready to go.
Yeah, and it's a point that college football purists don't really want to bring up when they talk about the good of the sport. There's a more equal distribution of talent that's being spread across. I know that Group of Five would definitely disagree with that, and Group of Five programs would be going, wait a minute, what are you talking about? If we have a guy that does anything of relevance, he's going to get tampered with in 2 seconds. And the Ashton Genties of the world are considered the minority now, who are willing to stay with a Group of Five program when they obviously have opportunities to go elsewhere. So you could look at it from a variety of standpoints, but the way that I think this season has played out, maybe this is a bit too generalized, but I think we're at least trending in that direction, is that we're seeing some of these upsets in part because these lesser teams have very obvious weaknesses that they can fill via the portal. And you can plug and play some of these guys. I mean, look at South Carolina. Kyle Kennard's leading the SEC in sacks, and he came over from a Georgia Tech program where obviously he had opportunities there, but South Carolina says, look, we need some guys that can just get after it up front. They have another one in Dylan Stewart, who's a 5-star true freshman, but you can just go out and get a guy like that, or get a guy like Nick Scorton from Purdue, who comes back home to Bryan College Station and does great things there, even after he led the Big Ten in sacks as a 19-year-old. So you can address these areas of weakness in ways that you couldn't before. And I think that's why some of these lesser programs are seeing, hey, they can play with a lot of these different teams that we didn't previously expect them to.
I want to talk about Tennessee for a second, and I saw this on your Twitter feed a couple days ago. Nico Amaliava, since halftime of the OU game, 0-1 TD to interception ratio, 37 for 64 for 393 yards passing. That's 6.1 yards per attempt. 21 rushes for 38 yards, no rushing TDs, 2 completions of 30 yards, and 7 sacks taken. Did Oklahoma and then subsequently Arkansas maybe crack the code on the Tennessee offense?
I don't know that they cracked the code, because I do think they're leaving plays out there. I mean, it's not just as simple as the scheme doesn't work anymore. I still have faith in Josh Heupel as an offensive mind and Joey Halzle as an offensive play caller, although Tennessee fans might push back on the second part of that. I do think that there are probably some issues up front on the offensive line that have plagued Nico, and I think Nico's decision-making has to get better. I think both things can be true at the same time. They've struggled at the tackle spots in ways that you just can't. If you want to operate that offense, and if you're going to operate with those wide splits, you can't be a total liability at left tackle. And Tennessee, for the last 10 quarters, has been, well, I guess 12 quarters really, because there was a lot of that Oklahoma game where they were a liability there. They have struggled to find that protection, and it looks like it has gotten to Nico, and his mental clock is not where it needs to be. I think he could have more than one interception in that stretch. I'm kind of surprised that he only has the one. It was a bad interception against Florida play in which he made a predetermined read and just threw it right into a defender. It's just sitting there in coverage. But yeah, this offense has issues to figure out this weekend. And the question is Alabama's defense the get right for Tennessee's offense? Or alternatively, is Tennessee's offense the get right for Alabama's defense, which also comes in riding a 10-quarter streak that's not particularly impressive. So, yeah, a lot of questions it feels like will be answered in Knoxville on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, that's fascinating. On the other side of that game last week was Florida, who fought valiantly to the end and lost Graham Mertz. I saw that you also said that, yeah, wrong about Graham Mertz. I think a lot of people were. I kind of thought he was a guy who's not going to get you beat. He's not also going to help you win a whole lot. But if you watched him this year, he was far from really their problem, which was really eye-opening to me.
You know, think about this too, and this might sound like a little bit of revisionist history, and I have been one to say, look, there are things that Graham Mertz isn't going to give you that other quarterbacks can, and it limits his upside. I mean, Graham Mertz is not making that throw on 3rd and 18 to be able to force a tie like DJ Lagway did. That throw was next level stuff. You can't teach that. You either have that or you don't, and DJ Lagway has that. But think about this. Graham Mertz gets hurt late in that game against Mizzou last year, a game in which it was back and forth in the fourth quarter, and Florida all of a sudden has to turn to a guy and that didn't necessarily run the offense the same way that Graham Mertz did. They end up losing that down to the wire game, and then they lose the following week to a backup quarterback with Florida State. And I have a point I'm going to make here. I promise I'll get there. They win that game against Tennessee if Graham Mertz stays healthy. If he doesn't tear his ACL, I think they win. I mean, look at they had 5 drives before that Lagway touchdown pass where they did absolutely nothing against the Tennessee defense. And it looked like Mertz was starting to figure some things out, fitting that, the play that he ends up leaving on is a touchdown pass, a really nice throw, and a play in which, he wasn't necessarily hit. He was hit on the play before. But my point is, I think the Florida Billy Napier chapter could have looked a little bit different if Mertz had been able to stay healthy. And he was incredibly durable, I thought, with some of the hits that he's taken over the course of the last year and a half. But I just think we can tell probably a different story with Florida if Mertz is on the field for some of those key moments. And those are 3 games that they don't end up winning that obviously would have changed the entire conversation about the Billy Napier era.
Yeah, he would at least be in this year of like, okay, well, we see where it's going. Lagway's here. You got Lagway. We'll give you some time to like let it marinate. But now that's over for him. I mean, they're 3-3, and he can say, look, we're 3-3. A lot of teams are 3-3, that aren't going to fire their coach. But yeah, the 3 losses were getting drilled by Miami and A&M, and then losing to Tennessee, which Florida fans hate losing to Tennessee.
I don't blame him for hating losing to Tennessee. Yeah. I would hate if I lost to a rival for just the 3rd time in the last 20 years, which that's the case. But yeah, I mean, and the problem with being 3-3 at this point of the season is this dreaded stretch to end the season. And I'll even do the thing where instead of including Florida State as part of this daunting 5-game stretch to finish the season, let's just slide it up and go to Kentucky because they've lost 3 in a row against Kentucky. Billy Napier has yet to win that football game. And the last time that Florida won that game, it was in front of a reduced crowd in 2020. So they're just trying to overcome that. That's why I think if Billy Napier loses this weekend at 3-4, I think he's fired on Sunday. I don't think you could be the coach that is sitting there having lost 3 consecutive years to Kentucky, the program that you had their number for 3 decades. And while that is really impressive on the part of Kentucky, and they've changed the trajectory of their program during this stretch under Mark Stoops, it's still such a bad look because of the way that Billy Napier has tried to establish this program and trying to do it with a very blue-collar identity like the one that Kentucky has. So if you go into this game and you can't win that game at home against Kentucky, I just think the optics are going to be so bad, and people are going to be looking at the rest of the schedule going, yeah, they've improved, but this isn't going to be anything better than like a 6-6 or a 5-7 team.
What are your thoughts on the Alabama fan base now learning week by week and having to slowly accept, or maybe rapidly accept, that Nick Saban really is gone?
Man, don't you know, we knew that there were going to be some moments this year in which that reality sank in, and it sank in a couple of weeks ago in Nashville. I think we can all agree on that. And I do think that there could be some better days ahead for this Alabama defense, but Kane Womack came into this job knowing that he was going to be scrutinized in a very unique way, because when you replace the greatest coach in college football history on that side of the ball, we're always going to wonder about the adjustments. Are you making the right adjustments? Well, so far, I would argue that he hasn't been able to do that. And Nick Saban was a master at those in-game adjustments. That's not what Kalen DeBoer is going to bring you as the Alabama head coach. He's not going to bring you those defensive adjustments because of his offensive acumen and his background and where we think his skills lie best. But with Womack, this is now a situation where you got to find answers quick. You can't just say, well, we're starting true freshmen in the corner and we're doing this on defense and it's taking a little bit to implement our system. No. You're sitting there with a group that is unraveling over the course of the last 10 quarters. Bama's been in the midst of a really, really bad stretch where they can't seem to stop the bleeding. I mean, 11 pass plays of 30-plus yards that they've allowed in that stretch. That's not going to cut it. And if you're that defense that just can't find answers, like the other day against South Carolina when they nearly had the answers to be able to win that game in Tuscaloosa, you're going to be one and done at a place like that. That's what is staring Kane Womack in the face right now.
Yeah, it's it's very, very daunting to be an Alabama fan for the first time in 17 years. I'm here for the humor of it all. Like, I think it's funny. I have a good friend who's an Alabama fan, and I sent him a text a couple days later. I'm like, hey, well, how we doing? And he's like, well, it just hit me that Nick Saban's really gone. Like, it's really gone. I was like, I mean, why didn't it hit you, the day he said I'm retiring? Like, I guess maybe they think, well, his office is now on the other side of the building. He's still there. Like, no, he works for ESPN now. Like, that's what he does. He doesn't work for you anymore. He's there, but he's not there. Do you think nationally, playoff-wise, have you changed your idea about what the playoff will be after this last week that was so tumultuous, especially with Ole Miss right now skating on the edge of the outside looking in?
I don't think Ole Miss is a playoff team anymore. Yeah. That's my biggest change week to week is I picked them to win at LSU, and I thought this was a really nice opportunity for what they have built on that defensive line to be able to go in there, and with a veteran offense, they should be able to respond. And Death Valley at night, I realize it's a place where dreams go to die, but I thought that was where LSU was going to kind of struggle and in that spot against an Ole Miss offense that looked like it had bounced back in South Carolina, but they just turtled down the stretch. They just absolutely turtled. That's a game that LSU fans know they probably shouldn't have won, and Ole Miss fans are like, how in the world did we just get our second loss?
Jackson Dart felt that way too.
Oh my gosh, his reaction afterwards, that kind of told the story, in my opinion. Like, seeing how stunned he was that they came off the field without a win, a game in which they never trailed until that final play, that walk-off winner to Kyron Lacey. Yeah, and you can't just blame it on the Trey Harris injury. As fantastic as that guy has been, Ole Miss just couldn't find those answers. And that's a problem, I think, for this team. And they're staring, I think, more like a 9-3, 8-4 type season. Think about this. Their penalty yards are wildly overlooked. They're going to have perhaps the most penalty yards of all but one or two SEC teams in the 21st century. And those are like early 21st century Mississippi State teams. They're averaging, I think, 85 penalty yards per game. With a veteran group like that, how is that happening? That's an indictment of Lane Kiffin. It really is. And you know what? You just can't make those mistakes and shoot yourself in the foot in the way that they have. And so, yeah, that was my biggest playoff takeaway from that crazy week 7 was take Ole Miss out of that conversation. I'm not picking them to run the table. I'm not even picking them to beat Georgia. I realize they still have a path if they go 10-2, but I can't sit here and say that I have a lot of confidence in that team with what we've seen from them in SEC play.
How legitimate do you think A&M is?
I think A&M is turning into a really scary team with Mike Elko. I really do. And I love Connor Wigman, and I banged the drum for him for a long time. That season opener was tough. It was really tough. Now, to be fair, Marcus Freeman and Al Golden got 8 months to dial up pressures against that guy. Yeah. And dare I say, it was a little bit more difficult of a task for him than it was for Marcel Reed going into the swamp against the Florida defense that didn't look like it want to get off a single block. And not to take away from what Marcel Reed did as a 3-0 starter. I mean, that kid deserves immense credit. He's got a really nice future ahead. But I give Mike Elko so much credit for being willing to turn to Connor Wigman and say, if we're going to reach the peak of what we have this year, we need to be able to be better passing the football. And we are going to turn to our guy. There's a reason they didn't go in the transfer portal. I think when you see Colin Klein come over from Kansas State, you're like, all right, what are they going to do? They're going to bring Will Howard over here? They're going to do something like that? Are they going to go in the portal and get somebody? No, they like Connor Wigman. They like him a lot, and they should, because you saw in that Mizzou game, that guy is so good when healthy. And if he gets some of these receivers, the Noah Thomases of the world to continue to step up, that's a scary team, especially with what they're figuring out on the defensive side of the ball, with Nick Scorton emerging as one of the best players, not just in the SEC, but really in all of college football. I just think that A&M, you look at them and you realize, wow, they have all of their toughest games are coming up at home. And if they can all of a sudden get into late November with playoff relevance, that's going to be a really scary team to play down the stretch.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Do you was their problem was Jimbo was not changing, scheme, like they were clearly figured out. They had a culture problem because of that. Like when a coach is stubborn and kind of blaming the players, even though they say, man, I love Coach Fisher, given the opportunity, they all left for a fresh start. And they had those recruiting classes that didn't pan out, but he did bring in a ton of talent. Like that was never a question for whoever was going to get this job. That's why, to me, it was really attractive, is that you can come in and maybe bring in some transfers and your guys, make it more of a worker bee attitude. And I think A&M's kind of back to who they were. They're as close to R.C. Slocum as I think they've been since the day he left.
Yeah, which is not something I expected to say after what we saw in the season opener. It's really not. And I've been a Mike Elko advocate since like 2017. I think that's when I have to go back. I mean, even his days at Notre Dame, I was a really big fan of what he was doing. And then when he came over to A&M, I thought that was a guy that just didn't deserve or didn't get the credit that he deserved. That 2021 A&M defense was so lights out. But they have really done things under Elko in year one that make you think, well, this is sustainable. They're going to be able to recruit both at the high school level and in the portal. And if you have someone that stands by his guys like Elko does, I mean, people love that dude. You see the way that he stands up for Connor Wigman after that Mizzou game, and you're just going, this guy, people are going to play for him. They absolutely will. People are willing to play for Jimbo, but if Jimbo's not going to make those right decisions and he needs to run the offense and do things his way, and we're only going to save the good plays and the motion, the pre-snap motion for Alabama, you're only going to go so far. But yeah, their upside, despite what people said after Mike Elko was hired about like, oh, that's kind of a cop-out move to hire a former Jimbo Fisher assistant to pay all that money to buy him out. I just think it was a great underrated move, and Mike Elko has proven a lot of people wrong so far.
Last thing, going back to Florida, Billy Napier is fired this week, next week, whenever it is. Do you have an idea? Like, are they still in the Lane Kiffin pipe dream, or is that a pipe dream still?
I still think it's a possibility, and I wouldn't bet on it happening, but they're going to pursue him. They absolutely are. Every indication I've gotten so far is that they are going to swing for the fences and they're going to get an established power conference coach. Now, does that mean they end up with Eli Drinkowitz? Does it mean that they end up with Jed Fish? Does it mean they end up with someone like Chris Kleiman, Lance Leipold? It's certainly possible. It definitely could be one of those guys, but I do think that Florida is going to be willing to spend and go above and beyond. This is not going to be a budget hire. It's just not. I mean, and they sank, what, $60 million into the Billy Napier regime, and to see it play out this way, they're still going to be willing to cut those checks. And so if you're thinking, well, you know, they're just going to take kind of the cheaper way out, they're going to pay a coach like $6 million a year, which in this day and age is considered actually cheap, as stunning of a sentence as that is. I do not think that'll be the case. I think they will swing for the fences. I do think that Lane Kiffin will be their top target. Whether or not they get him, that might be a different story. The timing of this move and what Lane Kiffin thinks he has at Ole Miss could determine that. But I do think that he's very much going to be in play.
I want to throw one NFL name out for you. Brian Daboll.
Wouldn't rule it out. I don't know that he's a college coach.
Yeah.
I think he's more of an NFL type guy. And I watched him closely with the Alabama offense that he ran in 2017, which did not gel in the way that many hoped it would with Jalen Hurts. And obviously Tua comes in halftime in the national championship, 2nd and 26. You know what happens there. But I watched him on the offseason Hard Knocks with the New York Giants. If you haven't seen that, like anybody listening to this, you should. It's an awesome watch. It's a really interesting look into a front office and how they operate. And I just kind of think he's a little bit more NFL wired, and I can't quite put my finger on it, but I just think the response that he has among NFL players is a little bit different than what it would be at the college level. It's a good name and a really good candidate, but I don't know that unless their season kind of implodes and it goes south in a hurry, I don't know that that's going to be something he would look at. I think he's a little bit more wired to be an NFL coordinator if he's not going to be able to keep his job as an NFL head coach.
Absolutely. Thank you, Connor. Connor O'Gara, Saturday Down South, one of the best college football websites out there. Love it. Follow him on Twitter. Read the stuff on the website. Connor, thank you so much. We'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, man.
Connor O'Gara, Saturday Down South. This is 365 Sports.
I've had a lot of ailments. My goodness. Hey, this is David Smoak. I'm 65 years old, and I'm going to have some things break down. I work out still most every day. I can't run like I used to. My hip is bothering me, and I've had injections in my back. In fact, one back in April up in Dallas, and it worked, but it did not solve the problem. So I need to get another MRI of my lower back, my lower lumbar, and also at some point figure out, is that what is affecting me having this throbbing pain? And it's more often than I even admit in my right hip. Ideal MRI set me up with an MRI last week, thanks to my doctor calling them and saying, this is what we need from your state-of-the-art imaging machines. So Ideal MRI, $497 or less every single time. Dr. Rob Maxey and his ownership and partnership, they have done a phenomenal job. This saves you money, a bunch of money. The average is $1,100, and you don't pay anything more and sometimes less with idealmri.com.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Midway Athletics and UBO Business Services are two names that exude winning. From Midway's top Central Texas Star test scores to college-like extracurricular facilities and UBO Business Services' industry-leading customer service scores, you can trust in these two winning programs. Best of luck to Coach Joe Gillespie and the Midway Panthers. And look at your sticker on your office equipment. If it does not say UBO, call Midway Class of 2020, Duff, Daxon, Dane, or Sean Hunt at 254-709-2101 or ubeo.com.
Our good friend Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jewelers here at 365 Sports. Now, Brad, people who watch and listen to our show know I'm a double-time customer for you, engagement ring and wedding band, and you guys do that great, but that's not all you do at Boozer's Jewelers.
Absolutely, and I always like to say, it's a new year. It's a great way to start the year out. Go through your old jewelry. Go through your wife's jewelry box. Go through anything you're maybe not wearing, something that's broken, something that you're not using. We do a massive amount of custom work. We can take your old jewelry, old diamonds, old watches, and we can convert it into something special for you and make a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry. And if that's not something you're interested in, a great thing is we can turn that into cash. So we buy gold, we buy diamonds, we'll buy Rolex watches, any kind of heirloom jewelry, anything that's maybe passed down to you.
Boozer's Jewelers, where do they find you, Brad?
We're at 1025 North Valley Mills Drive, right on the corner of Lake Air Drive and Valley Mills with the big clock on the corner.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. This segment is brought to you by Bud Light. Enjoy the smooth, crisp taste of Bud Light beer. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy.
My new best friend in the whole world, Kenneth Davis, Big Ten Country, joins us here. Kenneth, last week was, I don't want to call it a shake-up week in the Big Ten because Oregon, Ohio State, that was a 1-point game. It was if I had written the story of the game I exactly wanted in that, it was pretty much that. A game that came down to the literal last second of the game, 1 point, that was beautiful as far as watching and enjoying football. It wasn't the most beautiful game by any stretch of the imagination, but as far as excitement goes, it hasn't really put Ohio State behind any kind of 8-ball, but did it reveal anything to you about Ohio State that maybe surprised you?
No, it didn't. It kind of, in a way, one, they're still a really good team. And like you said, they're not behind the 8-ball. But I think the fear with someone that watches Ohio State and occasionally roots for them is sometimes, and I think I've mentioned it on here, and it wasn't indicative of last week, but it's always the fear of Ryan Day not just taking advantage of the weapons that he does have on that offense particularly. I think that's one of the things. But I think also I'd be disrespecting Oregon to give them the props. I was here last week talking about I still don't know if they're the national champion that we expected entering the Big Ten this year. And it's one of those slow burns, basically, where they're there. But as far as Ohio State, I mean, Ohio State can still get into the playoffs and win a national title, but there's still the fear when it comes down to coaching at critical moments with Ohio State. If Ryan Day can get that done, we're talking about not just the playoffs, but winning national championships. And that fear is still there. But I can't put it and throw it because you're still talking about, like you said, 1 point. They scored over 30 points. So at one point, I can't really just be like, this is a Ryan Day thing. But that's always my fear, looking at traditionally a traditional Big Ten school in Ohio State that has had the most talent over the last 15 years and had the biggest bites at the apple when it comes to winning national championships since the playoffs has begun.
He's 2-6 against the top 5. I mean, like that's the thing that is going to any other program in the country outside of like the 3 others that are like theirs would say, sure, like the fact that we're a top 5 team playing a top 5 team would be enough for us. Like, we'll take those 2 and hopefully rally. The problem is that 3 of those 6 are against Michigan, which is like a double X in the, like you missed the question on the test twice. Like this answer was so bad, I'm taking off 10 more points. And I don't think that's necessarily fair, but look, if you ask Florida right now, would you take Ryan Day if he got you to the playoff and every year you traded off losing to, say, Georgia or FSU? They'd be like, I mean, that's what we have done in the best years of our program anyway. So, yeah, does he want to come here? We'll clean up for him. Like, don't worry about that. But I would say it's a minority, but it's a vocal minority of Ohio State fans who are just going to hold that over his head until what he holds over his head is that national championship trophy.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, and one of the things that I always say when it comes to the Big Ten, particularly Ohio State fans, is say it with your chest out. Like, you can't be the biggest and baddest boys in the Big Ten and then be meek. And okay, I'll give you Michigan the last 2 years because Jim Harbaugh had them primed. Yes, to your point, it's a double loss because it's your arch rival, so it stings. But I'm an Alabama fan, right? And I know it may come off as arrogance, but Alabama had won so much that losing the national title didn't bother me as much. I'm like it. So for me, I get, if I'm an Ohio State fan, where Michigan becoming really good again, it would pester me. But in my mind, in the back of my mind, I would still kind of wonder, is it sustainable for Michigan to be that good? Because Jim Harbaugh only did it in the last few years of his tenure there. It wasn't like this 9 years that he was there that they were a national title contender all of those years. It was at a point where it seemed like they were going to be, and I'm referring to the University of Michigan, were going to be idiots and run him off thinking that they could get something better than Jim Harbaugh. So if I'm an Ohio State fan, a part of me would be like, yeah, I'm mad you lost to Michigan, but it was time. Maybe they just had our number. I think the big thing still is, you're not winning titles, and you're not in national championship games. And that's where, when you look at what Urban Meyer, how he had built that program up, bringing it to where Tressel took it to one point, then Urban Meyer took it to a national super team, basically, where the type of recruits he was bringing in. That's where my ire would be, because Ohio State has one of the best recruiting programs in the country, but you're still not seeing it on the field. And that's, to me, where you're right. Yeah, Florida should feel like that, but this is Ohio State. Ohio State doesn't have to settle. I think it's a thing like this. I'm not saying that recruits will go down in Ohio State, and I have another point to this. But do you want to mess around and wait and see because he's not necessarily getting it done? But also the flip side is this, and this is what I try to think about what I'm going to come on when we're going to have talk. I look forward to our Fridays. One of the things for me and my arrogance has been not properly paying attention to the parity within college football, because let's go back to Alabama. I've been spoiled by Alabama, and I like seeing superpowers where they're still superpowers, but they're not as strong as what they used to be. And that, if I was an Ohio State fan, I would start to have fear, because the schism that was once between you and these B schools, it's a lot closer now. And you have someone that's viewed as an offensive-minded head coach. Again, they put up over 30 points, but still you're viewed as one of the better schools, and you're not getting it done now. And as parity continues through the transfer portal and through NIL, how is that going to affect you moving forward as far as winning it all? Okay, now you have the 12-team playoff, so it gives you more opportunities. But still, at some point, you have to look Ryan Day in his face and say, this is not enough for the Buckeye Nation. If it was me, as far as being an alum or someone that just has an extreme affinity for the University of Ohio.
All right,
Ohio State.
They would love it if there was no University of Ohio, because then they wouldn't have to say the all that time.
Right.
But I've wondered this. for quite a while. Kyle McCord lost a game as the starter last year, and they pushed him out, but also they changed offensive coordinators. You see Kyle McCord playing in a system with Fran Brown at Syracuse that he's doing really well in. He's the fifth best passer in the country this year, and he does not have the talent. I mean, granted, he's got a couple dudes. Aranda Gadsden he's that guy at tight end. He's got a couple dudes around him, but he doesn't have what he had at Ohio State. And so I think and I'm not knocking Will Howard, but Will Howard in these moments, we saw him at Kansas State. Like, he had the great one against TCU, but then against Texas last year, it was very similar in that, he kind of locked up a little bit. Is Kyle McCord, was it fair to push Kyle McCord out the door when you also decided to bring in eventually Chip Kelly? At first it was Bill O'Brien when, he lost one game. You're setting an impossible standard for Will Howard the next year. And he already is a guy who I think is a good quarterback, but we've seen him clinch up in big moments before.
I think it's a bird in your hand type of situation.
Okay.
Where you knew what you had. I think this is the thing. And I have to look at Syracuse and who Syracuse is also playing compared to being within the Big Ten. But the weapons that Cal McCord had around him at Ohio State, and I'll put it like this. I don't know where Cal McCord begins and Ryan Day ends as far as the play calling while he was the starter under center. But there were times where you felt like Cal McCord couldn't take advantage of all the weapons that they had at Ohio State. And I think that was the fear. I mean, clearly they thought he was good enough because he was the starter. Now you could say it's burning them, but they're putting up points. But as you said, that Will Howard locked up, and Will Howard is going through, perhaps it could just be who he is, but he's going through growing pains. So I'm not mad that they didn't hold on to McCord, because I think a lot of us thought that they needed to move off of him. Does it look bad? Yes, it looks bad, but I understand the reasoning behind it. So I can't sit here as someone who last year was like, why isn't Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Ibuka, why aren't they taking advantage, Stover, why aren't they taking advantage of all these weapons that they have on the outside? And why does it look like when McCord there, he's being more of a game manager than taking advantage of all these weapons? And again, sometimes I place that on Ryan Day. And now because he's doing well at Syracuse, say, well, Ryan Day, you're stupid for getting rid of him. That wouldn't be fair for me. I won't do that, because I was down with the move. The move may have come back to bite them in the butt, but I was down with it. And I wouldn't be being honest if I came on here and lied to you and was like, yeah, they're dumb for doing it, because it was something that I probably would have done myself.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, in this spring, he's going to have a battle between 2 5-stars for who the next quarterback is. So,
right.
I mean, if you want to lose those guys, for sure, fire him. That's the other thing I would say to Ohio State. This is all new, especially with a 12-team playoff. But I get the frustration. Now to Oregon, the team that won that game. Mm-hmm. First of all, do you believe that Dan Lanning intentionally did the 12th man on the field thing, or that when people started saying that's a brilliant move, he'd be stupid not to go, oh yeah, I totally planned it out?
James Naveau, running with me during Big Ten country, we're texting, and as soon as it happens, he said, I think he did that on purpose. And that was the first time I heard someone say, I think he did it on purpose. I wish he hadn't said it. I wish he just would have played it off, even though I'm sure they would have made an addendum to the rule. I think perhaps he did, to be honest with you. I know, of course, it sounds good and everyone wants to prove that they're genius, but I think he did. I think that smart coaches do things like that. And again, he could be lying, and, he could have just pulled the wool over my eyes, but you're supposed to make up situations like that to burn time off the clock and use the rules against the rules. So I think he did it on purpose. What do you say?
I think he did too. I mean, and here's the thing: the NCAA moved faster on this because they again than they have on anything in their history, because it is like a potential crisis point. Because
yes,
this is not that was not like a clever thing. Now that other coaches who may have never thought about that in a million years knew that was out there, why wouldn't I just put 17 guys on the field? Have all kind of chaos And, you like, I'll have all kind of chaos. If I knock the pass down, the Hail Mary that might have made it with 13 guys on the field, and you have to do it again with my 11. I mean, why not? Like,
and you ran time off the clock.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that. I wonder. I think my question would be to Dan Lanning: did you know that, or who told you that? Because that's the coach that we need to be watching moving forward in the future, who knows the rules well enough to be like, hey, coach, you know what? If we do this, or I was working at this place and we had this idea, but that was a smart stuff like that. You have to love in sports when someone knows the rules well enough to take advantage of them when they're on defense to hurt the offense in the manner that they did versus Ohio State last weekend.
Yeah, that's why I'm always fascinated when an offense like on – say like 4th and 6 from the 50 wants to like take a delay so they can have more room to punt, and the other team takes it. I'm like, no. They're worried that their guy's going to punt it out the back of the end zone. Just decline it. Like, just say no.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yes.
No, we're happy with a touchback. I won't even send anybody back if it, like if you don't think your guy can coffin corner it, go ahead. So.
I'm with you. I hate sometimes where people stick to what their tradition is when you knew there may be an advantage if you buck their tradition in that type of manner. It's like, no, don't have a fear about it. Like you say, put it on the field. Let's find out what can happen. I hate sometimes that people stick to tradition when there's other avenues that you can take advantage of to win the game.
Which is why I love Dan Lanning. He's well on his way to being, to me, America's coach, where everybody's be like, that guy's fun. Like, he's just – and after that game, he looked like – I said on the air, he looked like he had, like, a lion that just, like, killed the wildebeest, like, where he was just like, like, that was huge. That was huge.
He should have. I mean, again, I don't know what's going to happen at the University of Alabama, but and I'm not trying to diss Kellen DeBoer, but it may have been nice if Dan Lanning had decided perhaps to pick up and move his stuff down to Alabama, but that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah, absolutely. Garrett's laughing. At the LSU fans laughing.
Hell yeah, I
am. We'll see. We'll see.
All right. The best game in the Big Ten this week between Big Ten teams is Nebraska and Indiana. I think Nebraska should be ranked. I absolutely think they should be ranked. I think it's bogus that they're not. They have a very close loss to Illinois, who's a really good team. And for whatever reason, like, it's part of the SEC bubble that they don't want to like let some teams fall out, right? So they leave them there. But Indiana's the biggest surprise in the whole country, not named Army and Navy, and maybe even still the biggest surprise because they're not only winning, like they're scoring points. They're fun. Like, this isn't like a weird thing. Like, Kurt Cignetti's brought his style. Curtis Rourke's playing really well. This is legit. Nebraska and Indiana, one of the best games in the entire country that's not named Texas and Georgia. And I feel like it's going to fall to the wayside because we have Texas and Georgia. But let's talk about this one because this is a doozy here.
Yes. Listen, man, I don't want to hate on the Hoosiers. And this goes back to something that you asked me, I believe, last week. And it was about how many victories could Indiana have. And now this is really the first game where it's kind of like, okay, now Nebraska isn't all the way back just yet, but it has one of the stingiest defenses in college football, right? And I think all of us are still waiting. I think we all know that Dylan Raiola is nice, but he's still a young quarterback. So it's not like he's putting up swashbuckling numbers, but he can get it done. And he has innate ability that's like, oh, I see why he is compared to Baby Goat, also known as Patrick Mahomes. Mm-hmm. But the thing being is when you just think about the amount of points and the fact that they've been putting up 40 on basically everybody, even though, I mean, Maryland isn't anybody this year. Like, if we're being honest, I think they're 3-3. And that was really the school has kind of been like, okay, that's a middling Big Ten power. But now looking at Northwestern smashing Maryland last weekend, like, it's okay. Maryland's kind of going through it. They're maybe next year they'll be better. I'm not going to go with Nebraska. I thought about this long and hard before I came on here, right? Because in my heart of heart, I want to choose Nebraska, right? But then it's like, man, Kurt Cignetti is doing something crazy. When you think about all the transfers that have come into that school this year, and how quickly that he's forged that team together. You mentioned Curtis Rourke has thrown for like 14 TDs and a couple interceptions. I mean, this is going to be the first sellout that they've had at that field. They're bowl eligible, and look at where we're at in the season. You got to give them props. Matt Rule said, and I think he's right, that they probably would be in the top 10 if they hadn't started outside of the top 25, that they're a top 10 school as of right now. And I say it as a knock, they haven't played anybody, but they have. You have to see when they go up against teams that we think are formidable, and this is the beginning of it. They're going to have more schools that they have to play that are even more formidable when you're talking about Washington after Nebraska. Michigan State, they're going to drum Michigan State. Michigan will be interesting, but Ohio State will really be the one. But, I mean, when you look at it, it wouldn't be crazy if they only lost two games, two to one game out of that upcoming schedule. Because how they're playing right now, it wouldn't shock me if they beat Michigan. I'm not saying they're going to beat Michigan. I think Michigan still has enough horses, even though they're not putting the ball in the air, to get it done with the ground and pound and what they do within the trenches. But it wouldn't be shocking if Indiana could put up enough points that Michigan can't catch up because they can't do anything through the sky. Man, it's crazy. This will be the game to me where, honestly, I shouldn't say that. That's going to decide how I feel about Indiana, because they can lose this game and still be a really good team moving forward. But it's at least against a school and a team and a program that's in this upward trajectory of Matt Rule in Nebraska, to where it can kind of let us know and give us a baseline test of what Indiana really is against I won't say a power, but a school that's becoming a power again in Nebraska. I was shocked. I shouldn't be shocked because of what Indiana's been doing, but I think the spread is like 6.5 or something. Mm. And that, to me, is like, against that defense over Nebraska, is like, oh, that's kind of interesting. But you have to give Indiana its props for what it's accomplished so far this season. But to your point, Nebraska lost one game at home to a team that has been doing everything possible in Illinois to get where it's gotten, and it still ranks. Nebraska shouldn't get a ding. It should get dinged if Illinois fell on its face the last couple of games after beating Nebraska. And even though Illinois had a close game last weekend, it still shouldn't have hamstrung Nebraska where they shouldn't be in the top 25, because it's kind of on the flip side of like Indiana. People didn't expect Illinois to have the type of season that they're having so far this season. So you shouldn't punish Nebraska because of that. You should actually reward Nebraska because they lost to Illinois in a close game, and Illinois has been performing and has been in the top 25 for like the last four weeks.
Yeah. The game, look, part of it is the game is changing, and not everybody, like, you have slow realizations as to this is what things are now, and some of the slowest realizations are coming from the AP voters, and the coaches. Like, bottom line, those are the people who are voting. Yep. I think this is all going to be different 5 years from now. We're going to look at it very different because we'll have a large sample size. But Kenneth, and just last thing here, this is where we're going to be. Like, you're going to still see the powers be the powers, but I don't think you're going to see 10-year dynasties anymore. I don't think you're going to see maybe even 5-year dynasties. You're going to have dips. It's going to look like the NFL, where you have a team that's in the Super Bowl one year, and I'll just use my Florida State Seminoles as the example, 13-0 last year, and then this year they're struggling. Next year they might be good again. We don't know. But look, if you told me that next year Ohio State was going to be 8-4, I'd be like, well, there are circumstances that would allow to that, right? Where, you can drop off. It's harder, but I would believe it more than I would just 2 years ago.
Can I be the old curmudgeon to say, get off of my lawn?
Yeah, sure.
Everything, what you're saying is exactly how I feel. But then the thing is, and I like how you just pointed out, we have to get a larger sample size. But then for me, it takes away from what I feel like I'm supposed to quasi know, because it's like, look, Penn State always is not questionable on the road. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's always a question. Yeah. And Drew Allard threw hella interceptions last weekend. But still, you look at what is SC like? Yeah, SC ran. We were questioning SC's offensive line versus Michigan, and they ran the ball down the Penn State's throats, Tom Allen's defense throats last week. And it's like, wait, hold on. I can't get a proper read on all of that. And that's to where I'm an old curmudgeon because, like you said, it's going to take time to understand parity and how it's going to affect these teams there was a large schism between them and other universities where it is shorter. I will say this: if Ohio State is 8-4 next year, I'm going to be upset as somebody that's a proponent of the Big Ten. But your point is valid. It can definitely happen. And part of me, and I guess I shouldn't be like that because I did get to experience what Alabama did. It'd be different if I never experienced it. I was rewarded with a great experience by Nick Saban and the young man and the whole staff that put that together. That we probably won't see again, and it'll probably be the windows will probably be a class of depending on it'll let us know. Some coach, you know what? I'll say this, Paul. Some coach will figure it out, though.
Yeah.
Some coach will be good enough to where he will have his classes rolling in and have the transfer portal to accent what he needs to where his team is in the top 5, or just the playoffs in general, but he's consistently giving his team a chance at the dance. But we just kind of got to find out. And it may be guys that we already have talked about today. It could be Dan Lanning. It could be Kirby. It could be Sarkisian. It could be, but it's also going to be some guys that we're not talking about that are going to know how to do and what they need to do to keep the young man engaged and at their programs over the long haul, but also are smart enough to benefit from NIL and the transfer portal to really even kick it up another notch. But it's the Wild West. And I don't mean it in a negative sense because a lot of people make it seem like it's a bad thing. To me, anything that helps the students get more is great. It may not be, I may not like it. I may get tired of, wait, what school was he at last year? Yeah, but so what if I'm insignificant when it comes to these young men's futures and what they can get accomplished, even if they don't make it to the pros, the type of money or just the experiences they can have. But again, for me, it's like, hold on, what is going on? But again, I'm an old man on the porch.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kenneth, I'll sit on that porch with you any day, buddy. I will.
Hey, come on. Come
right That's right. Kenneth Davis, Big Ten country. One of my favorite guests we've ever had, and it's just getting bigger and better. I love it, Kenneth. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week, buddy.
See you next week. You guys have a great one.
All right. Kenneth Davis, Big Ten country. This is 365 Sports. Edward Jones Financial Advisors Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott understand these are difficult and changing times we live in, but they know how important your financial investments are to you. So is your financial advisor staying in touch with you and helping you navigate today's financial climate? Invest with Edward Jones Financial Advisors Ben Erlinson, Chuck Verno, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott, who invest their time and experience back to you and your money. And like coaching athletes, investing money is about time, patience, and encouragement. Contact Ben Erlinson at 254-759-8533. Brad Wilson's location at 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, and Cam Heathcott in Conroe. Edward Jones Financial Advisors, Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott, proud sponsors of 365 Sports. Edward Jones, making sense of investing, member SIPC.
Is your car ready for a makeover? Get ready to fall in love with your ride again at City Tire and Battery. City Tire and Battery is family owned and has provided expert service with top quality products since 1942. And with financing available, there's no reason to put off those much needed upgrades. Give your car the love it deserves and go see City Tire and Battery, located at 1502 South Valley Mills in Waco.
New arrivals just dropped at Barefoot Campus Outfitter in Waco. Looking for the best Baylor gear? Barefoot is the place to grab your gear. Game day polos, tees, tanks, caps, clear stadium bags, jewelry, and more. Barefoot Outfitters has all the essentials with unique campus apparel and offering comfortable garments and designs. Long-lasting images that people continue to enjoy wearing time and time again. Located right off I-35 on Spate, or shop at barefootcampusoutfitter.com and get free shipping on orders $75 or more. Go Bears.
Everything we do for you. First Central Credit Union says it's game on. Lower your monthly vehicle payments by refinancing your vehicle with First Central. Make it a winning season with refinancing set to your preferences. You decide the due date and frequency. Financed elsewhere? Save money with a new local game plan. Apply online today. We make it easy to score at firstcentralcu.com.
Membership and loan policy requirements apply. Member NCUA.
Texas Farm Bureau Insurance has protected fellow Texans with auto, home, health, and life insurance since 1952. With more than 260,000 square miles of land and 27 million people, that's a lot to cover. Whether you're wrangling cattle or wrangling kids, we're proud to protect Texans in all Texan ways of life.
Call Deborah Holder at 254-300-7202 to see if you qualify to save up to 40% on your auto insurance.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Ben Erlinson, who'll navigate you through today's financial climate. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
65 Sports, Josh Neighbors in for his weekly segment as we go over the Big 12. Josh Neighbors, of course, is Big 12 Watch, and find him on YouTube at Big 12 Watch. Josh, let's start out with the game tonight. The biggest surprise and success maybe of the season, even maybe more so than Iowa State, because we thought Iowa State would be pretty good, maybe not as good as they've been, but number 13 BYU hosts Oklahoma State tonight. And Oklahoma State, one of the biggest, if not the biggest disappointment maybe in the Big 12, starting a new quarterback. Is this Mike Gundy looking to next year and seeing if he's got anything at that position, or if he needs to go to the now T. Boone Pickens list money bags and say, please get me a quarterback?
Yeah, I think the issue I've had is that they have not really given Garrett Rangel the reins, right? They haven't done that, and they haven't really given him that opportunity. So let's hope that they do that and they're able to just give him that fair shot. But the fact that he hasn't really broken through yet is a touch concerning, but still, he deserves that full shot and that chance, and he's been around a bit for a while and was a pretty big prospect. I mean, I have been on record of talking about Alan Bowman before, so I'm not going to keep beating the dead horse here about how I never thought he was that good and don't think he's that good. And, it's the old adage, or at least not an old adage, but the old idea. It's like, hey, is Trent Dilfer a Super Bowl winning quarterback, or is he on a team that won a Super Bowl? Right. Is same thing we said about Brad Johnson. Peyton Manning's corpse was on the Denver Broncos. I wouldn't say it was he won them the Super Bowl, Alan Bowman was on a Big 12 championship team, or team went to the Big 12 championship. I wouldn't say he was a Big 12 championship caliber quarterback. He had some good games, but it never felt like he carried them. So, I had some questions because especially at his age, he wasn't going to get much better, and things didn't get better. And teams keyed in the run and said, hey, can you beat us? And in the beginning he did, but, he not a super high level of competition besides Arkansas, which that Arkansas win continues to get better. So, yeah, I was skeptical from the beginning, and yeah, we're starting to head towards a place where it looks like they might have to go shopping, which they should have done before. But, we'll see if they can find a new one in the portal, or if, they can get a freshman in there maybe.
Yeah, and we don't know if Ollie Gordon's going to play or not. We don't know, all these things that are mysterious about Oklahoma State now. And BYU's just been really tough. They will fight you in the street. They will absolutely
They will exclusively fight you in the street, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
It is the only way they will play.
Yeah, that's the way they are. Jake Retzlaff has been the most improved player in the conference, probably. And not that he's, again, ripping it up, statistically, but he's helping them win. He's not getting them beat. So he's not Zach Wilson, but guess what? When you have a defense like this and a running game like they have, and receivers that make plays at key times, you don't really need Zach Wilson if you're BYU.
Yeah, I mean, he's taken 5 sacks on the year, which is, through 6 games, pretty good, right? So protecting him well, and he's not, not getting sacked a ton. 14 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. On average, his average, throws 8 yards. I mean, this is not a super explosive offense, right? They've hit some long passing plays, right? But the longest passing play of the year for them is 57 yards. So, I mean, they've hit a few of those, and then their longest rush of the year is pretty crazy, 37 yards. So this is not super, super explosive. But what they do is they capitalize. And actually, I wish I had the red zone numbers in front of me, but you have to imagine they're pretty good. And they turn teams over a ton. for them, like they're 50th in passing yards per game, 86th in rush yards per game. But like they're top 40, 35 in points scored just because like they're really they're opportunistic. And that's what good teams do. I think if your team plays basically throws a perfect game against them, how it will go, I think they'll win. But like you look at the best teams they played, they thumped K-State and they thumped Arizona too. SMU and Baylor were the two closer ones, right? So now here comes a big test. I got Oklahoma State at UCF, and I know UCF's falling apart at Utah. Utah's kind of falling apart a little bit too. KU at Arizona State and Houston. I mean, is it crazy to say at Arizona State is like the toughest game left in their schedule? Is that crazy to say?
Yeah. No, it's
what
not.
In
I
the
mean,
world
it
has
is,
happened?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. Like it's and good for this is what we wanted, we expected in the Big 12. Is like this is gonna be this, and I think the ACC will be this to some extent too. But the Big 12 will really be this of the most fluid conference in the country year over year. Like they're like you will not be able to perch yourself at the top of this and then wait for the next challenger and then smack them away like Oklahoma did for so long.
Yeah, I mean what's funny is this was a story even when Texas and OU were in the league to the end, right?
Yeah.
Like I made this point a ton on the shows, I was on it, like 2020 Iowa State Oklahoma, 2021 Baylor Oklahoma State, 2022 K-State TCU, 2023 we had our first repeat. It was Oklahoma State though that was repeating, and then Texas. So I mean 7 different teams in 8 years, 4 separate champions in those, in those 4 years, 7 separate teams, 4 separate champions. And yeah, I mean, year over year, the competition level in this league, like it's just these programs get built. Like to win at these programs, you have to build, and you kind of can live in a certain area, right? You can live at 7, 8, 9 wins, and TCUs can happen too. But like, you kind of need that jump where you say, okay, this is, we have a good team, but this is the year where everybody's old and it all makes sense and everybody's playing really, really well. And so it's kind of the things coalesce around these teams and they peak. But then you kind of have to you get knocked down a peg and you have to rebuild. And that's what this league is kind of built on. It's just a matter of like where, identifying who those teams are. Cause it feels like it makes sense when these teams start winning, maybe BYU, not as much, but it's kind of hard to identify them sometimes because we're like, hey, these teams look great. And all of a sudden TCU's unbelievable and you're number 1 against Sonny Dykes. So it can be a challenge to ID the teams, but it's going to be tough to keep yourself up top. I mean, I think we're going to have some of the same folks around the top, Utah, Oklahoma State, they'll be in that area, but to stay at the top, yikes, tough.
But look, I'll tell you a team I think that you mentioned them that has maybe unlimited growth potential if they can keep on the right track is Arizona State. Like they're sitting in a spot that is really like they can get, like, because of their location between Texas and California, they can get some guys to Tempe, with Kitty Dillingham that can make them good. But that leads me to this week against Cincinnati. I feel a little bit robbed because this is a game I was really kind of looking forward to because both teams have been very pleasant surprises. And now Sam Levitt, who is getting better every week, is going to be out for a little bit with that rib injury. And we'll see how good Kenny Dillingham is because the human fumble,
the Jeff Sims experience
is coming. So I would not be surprised if you are the offensive coordinator or the head coach. Instead of a water bottle, you just have somebody that just hands you a beer every time he fumbles. It's like, all right, good, all right.
He's essentially like Chase. He's like Chase Daniel in college. Like he's a career backup now.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what. The one thing Jeff Sims gives you is a rushing element. So if they can maybe pull some, and I'm not going to put it past Kenny Dillingham. If they can make that run game dynamic this week and they can block well up front, which will be the big challenge, against which should be a pretty heavy box, they have a chance. So I'm excited to see what the game plan is. But man, it looks like we have a special one on our hands, don't we? I mean, It just appears to, like, a lot of coaches say it's like we want our guys to come in, so we want guys who want to be here. but when he says it's like, we have to have people who want to be here. He goes, you will win if you are here. You can win with me. We want to keep guys in the state, but like he just has a really good understanding of his roster, and he knows he can get better players, and he thinks the players should come and play for him. It's hard to tell him no right now at the way he's coaching, but man, just like to see that, like he gets it, and he's everything you want in a coach, because we're talking about like a basketball, like Tony Bennett stepping aside, Roy Williams, Kay, all stepping aside because the game's changing, and Nick Saban stepping aside in the football side of things. Kenny is kind of the snapshot of what you want, right? Mm-hmm. He's young, he's energetic, he reaches players, he can coach ball. Yeah. I mean, this guy's a star. He's an absolute superstar, it looks like. And I haven't even mentioned the fact that their program got put in a really crappy spot by the previous regime. Yeah. And he's had to dig them out of that in the new league. And he's just doing it one game at a time, one play at a time, one Cam Scatabo rush at a time. Yeah. It's a really good approach. It's a really solid, well-coached approach. And in the Texas State game, they got down 2 scores. There was no panic. They did not panic. Yeah. And that's a sign of a good leader.
Yeah. I would just tell, like, if you're a quarterback in particular, and nationally somebody had to hand me a resume of quarterbacks that he pulled from the abyss, and it's Jordan Travis and Bo Nix, like I'd be like, all right, there we go. Like, and that's maybe like, that's why if I were Jeff Sims, that's where I would have gone. Like, my best shot at being a professional football player is going with someone who can, pull me out of it, because Bo Nix, was a guy who was, man, he has so much potential, but there's swaths of games where he's just not there. And then in the last 2 minutes, it's like he, breaks out of his stupor and does crazy stuff. And then he goes to Oregon with Kenny Dillingham, and he's one of the best players in the country and a Heisman candidate all year long, right? Then with Jordan Travis, he was ready to quit playing quarterback. Like, he was like, please move me to wide receiver. And Mike Norvell and Kenny Dillingham were like, the hell we will. You're our quarterback. Look what you can do. Do you not understand what your ability is? Right. And then this is a guy who won 23 games in 2 years, right? And that's what they made into those guys. So that's the guy I want to be. I'm a little disappointed this game's not going to be as good, though. But, yes, I love Kenny Dillingham, too. Houston and Kansas, we won't spend much time on it. But if Kansas loses this one, is this rock bottom?
Yeah. Yeah. That's all I'll say about the game.
Yeah. I look, and Houston had the big win over TCU. I'm really curious to see how Zion Chris progresses at QB and see what he is. But, yeah. Colorado and Arizona is an interesting one in that Arizona's okay. Like, I would just call them okay. They're okay. They've got a couple of stud players, but they need a little bit more depth. Colorado lost a really great game against Kansas State at home last week. They're making steps forward. Do you think this is one, and they're not favored in this game? This would be a huge one in Deion's corner to go on the road after a loss and win, which is obviously something he did not do before.
Yeah, the big numbers last week for them were, I mean, I didn't see the rushing success rate for them, but we're getting to appalling numbers. I mean, Shador ends up getting sacked, 6 times in that game last week. Part of that's on him, parts of the line. You still take that out. They ran the ball 10 times for 21 yards. Mm-hmm. Their longest rush between those three guys, the 2 guys, Augusta and Hayden, was 4 yards. So, like, you need to be able to do something else. I know that one pitch they have is pretty good when they throw the ball around, but Travis Hunter is injured. So this big test. They went without Travis Hunter, that'd be huge. But they did a pretty good job stopping the run last week. I mean, I think like 4.3 a carry against K-State's not terrible, and 26 yards, the longest rush for DJ Giddens. I know he was 7.3 per carry, but did a pretty good job on Dylan Edwards. Avery Johnson didn't have a ton of success. They did get in the backfield some last week. So I think it's I think it's an improved team. I really do. I mean, 31 points to win that game. Like, that's not bad. It's, it's just like I think Colorado could be better if they treat it like the different stuff personnel wise. Like, it's not like we can only pick wide receivers or offensive linemen. It's like you could do both. Like, or it's like, pass rushers or wide receivers. Like, I think they could do both. So they just need work in like the heavy hitter areas where you win games, where 6 wins goes to 8 wins, where 8 wins goes to 10, the trenches. That's where you get that. And they did put some work on the offensive line. They need more of that, though, I think, between the tackles.
Baylor goes to Texas Tech after the bye. Tech going along really well now, 5-1. This is not a place historically Baylor has ever done well in Lubbock, except for 2 years ago. They went and really took it to Tech, and that was kind of the last. I want to say that was the last really good win of the Dave Aranda era right now, because since that game in particular, the wheels have been different shades of off. And while this is a better Baylor team, sorry, Robertson's going to play in his hometown, all of that stuff, they'll probably score a little bit here. They can't stop the run. Taj Brooks, if you want to know who the actual best running back in the Big 12 is going to be this year, it's Taj Brooks. I mean, there's some – Cam Scadaboo has some claim to that, but Taj Brooks, as he goes, so goes the Tech offense. And, the one game he didn't play, they lost. So if Taj Brooks gets loose, and he got loose all over Baylor last year, I just don't see Baylor having a shot in this one.
Yeah, I mean, he's such a consistent runner. He's not a home run guy. Like, his longest rush is 35 yards. And the reason why it's important, and I mention this all the time, with Zach Kitley's offense, with the pace that they go, it's very, very important for them to be able to have a changeup. And, it's like watching a pitcher. Like, you can't just throw fastballs all the time. You can't just challenge fastball. Especially, like, their fastball is pretty good, but, like, they can get stopped. And if you throw 55 times a game, you're gonna have some incompletions. And if multiple incompletions happen in a row, your defense will be on the field a lot. So it's important. And Zach Kitley realized this last year, that Taj Brooks gets more involved in the rushing game. And he's what paces their offense. Every fast pace, like veer and shoot, like all those offenses in the end of the day do want to run the ball, especially, well, they don't really run at the pros, but like especially in college, just because, some of these guys, like these college quarterbacks, aren't always amazing. We're seeing Tennessee go through this right now. Like, they need to run the ball already more than they do because Nico's not as accurate. I think Barron's pretty good. He looks like he's a lot healthier, and he's had a really good season. There's a good chance here, Paul, that Texas Tech could run this thing to 7-1. They have got a home game against Baylor this week, like you mentioned. They've got at TCU next week, and then they're at Iowa State. So, I mean, they could be 7-1 going on the road November 2nd against Iowa State, and what a game that really could put them in Big 12 championship contention. I'll tell you this, like, their defense to me is not a lot better, but in a league that the Big 12 just feels a bit down this year,
is it better enough? Like, that's the question.
That's what I'm wondering. Is
it needs to be better enough?
Like, they're basically like 3 turnovers. Like, if they get the right turnover at the right time in certain games, they're going to be right there.
If you score 38-45 a game,
you
don't need your defense to be
lights
elite.
Out.
You just need it to be good. Like, you'd like it to be great.
Or just like create a couple extra scoring opportunities for your offense. Let your offense punches in. So, I mean, if you can flip, if you can get me a turnover, on their side of the field, like the offense that good, you can give up touchdowns the rest of the time. We'll just take care of the rest, extra possession, extra 7, kind of that type deal. And then also if you can be decent enough in the red zone. And I'm not sure what the red zone numbers are, but I mean, you look at the last couple games, like 2 of the last 3, Arizona State scores 22 points, and then Arizona scores 22 points. So, I mean, that's good. That's good enough for me, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Let's run through a couple of these here at the end. UCF, Ja'Curry Brown starting this week. The Miami transfer, really athletic guy, but again, it's not established himself as a starter anywhere. This is bad news for that KJ Jefferson transfer. Not a great place for your first start on the road against this number 9 Iowa State team that is really, really good.
Yeah, it's not that's not the matchup we want. UCF's got kind of like the talent to really screw up a team like Iowa State's season, but just this spot, like, this is where you lean on your defense. This is where, you get after the quarterback, you make a young guy pay. And Iowa State's been very good. They're 5th in the country in points against, right? They're scoring 31 a game. They're giving up 11. I mean, they're not even top 50 in offense, and they're outscoring their opponents by 20 every game. And, it's a balanced attack, rush and pass. They've got I think Rocco, to me, Paul, like, I think there's still a lot of room for him to grow and get better. I think it's a guy who's got a lot ahead of him. And you look at last week, they put the chokehold on West Virginia, and they squeeze. Actually, the box score like kind of bears this out. First quarter 7, second 3, third 0, fourth 6. At that point, the game was kind of getting out of reach territory. And West Virginia under 5 yards a carry. Like, they won the game by 2 scores. Iowa State did. And they didn't even rush for 3 yards a carry. Their longest was 14 yards. Now, they did hit some explosive pass plays, but that's just them identifying where West Virginia is weak and hitting them there. So they're just really good at managing matchups. And this is a matchup I think they're going to get at. It's green light, it's go zone, it's get after a young quarterback.
Yep. All right, Kansas State and West Virginia. Is this one, considering that there's going to have planes flying over with Fire Neil Brown, maybe more important than it normally would be?
Yeah. I mean, look, they're not beating anybody. Like, they're 2-1 in the league, sure, but like they've had all these opportunities against teams that have kind of been. Penn State is a good team. They lost by 22. Pittsburgh, good team, lost by 4. Iowa State, good team, lost by 12. The teams they've beaten are Albany, KU, and Oklahoma State. Do we think any of those teams are good?
No.
So what's changed from last year? They didn't beat many good teams last year.
Yeah.
And they're not doing it this year. And that's that, like, for Neil Brown, like, that was the big challenge to me was, can you take a step up with this offense, and will Garrett Green get better? And the 3-headed rushing attack too. Like, can you turn all of that into results? And could you be better as a team, even though your record wasn't any better? Well, it turns out the record probably won't be any better, and the team isn't much better. And so that's why we're back to, I'm not saying we got to fire him now. I want to see how this season goes, but like it's right to ask the question, because last season was not like, you're great, you're all good, dust you off, polished you off, you're our head coach now. You had to have that 9-win year, and you gave that to us. Thank you. But like, we need to see more sustained results, especially with a team that's as old as this team is at the positions that matter a lot. So yeah, I mean, it's a great spot to be at home. You're glad it's a home game. It's a night game, but this is where you got to put your foot in the ground. And if you win this game, Paul, you got at Arizona, at Cincinnati. It's 2 difficult games. Baylor, UCF, and at Tech. So you're not out of the Big 12 championship hunt if you win this game.
Yeah.
Can this be the catalyst for them? But this is kind of like any kind of upward trajectory West Virginia program type deal, stacking great seasons really good seasons back to back. It hinges on this game. You have to win this game to prove that to me and everybody else.
All right. Last but not least, the old man is sidelined, and Cam Rising. Isaac Wilson's the guy for the rest of the year. TCU's been flailing. I still have Utah.
Is that for sure? Is that for sure? Or is it indefinite?
What?
Is Cam Rising done for the year?
He's out.
Done for the year?
Done for the year. Yeah, done for the year. So
because I heard Whittingham say indefinite at the beginning of the week. I didn't know if it was.
Yeah. No, he's out for the year. So now we talk about his potential 8th year, which he is eligible for.
Okay. I'm going to say this very nicely. I think Cam Rising should go pro in something other than sports. I think we can all agree it's maybe time for that.
Well, at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, they give you the tools to be successful.
They do. Honestly, like, I feel like Cam Rising could be a coach immediately.
Yeah,
like, I really think he's a smart dude. I think people like him.
Mm-hmm.
I think people really, really like the guy.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, like, you need to be on the field, and like, you can't be a backup either, because like, hey, you got to be on the field.
Yeah.
Like, need you to stay healthy, and like, it's a variety of issues for him. I mean, hand and foot and shoulder, and like, yeah,
devastating knee injury. Devastating.
It sucks because we all like Cam Rising. We wanted to see Utah at full strength this year.
Yeah, it was. All right, Josh Neighbors, Big 12 Watch. Josh, have a great weekend. Feel better, buddy.
Thank you, Paul.
Better.
I hope I feel better too.
Yeah.
I do too. See ya.
See ya. That is Josh Neighbors, Big 12 Watch. When we come back, it's the top 5.
If your business is like most, you need things done quickly. But if you're still tying your critical applications together on multiple shared public networks, you've probably been feeling the slowdown. And that's no good for business. A private UPN fiber network can get you and your business moving at the speed of light. Whatever you need, we can build it. Internet, Metro Ethernet, Waves, dark fiber. We deliver custom private networks and are focused on business customers only. Our next generation 100% fiber optic infrastructure offers you low latency and ultra scalable bandwidth with speeds up to 100 gigabit to run your critical applications. Your connection won't be limiting your performance anymore. It's diverse and scalable, so it can grow and change as your business grows and changes. And with a secure carrier-grade private network, you'll have all the reliability you need. Contact UPN today to learn more. Fast just got faster.
For Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Our promo code is 365sports. Go to bitonbeef.com. Make sure you are on the schedule for all the auctions they have coming up. And they come up fast and furious. I get texts, I get emails, all that to remind me when they're coming up. So if I'm not paying attention to Smokey, which, let's face it, is half the time, I don't have to worry about writing the dates down when he does the live spot. So you can sign up for all that when you go to bitonbeef.com. So you make sure that you get your beef when you want it and get to bid on it on bitonbeef.com and texasbeefhouse.com, which will take you to bitonbeef.com in case you don't remember all those things I just told you, which is fine. I didn't expect you to be paying attention because I don't pay attention when Smokey says it. But that's all a joke. Most improved QBs today. Number 5, Rocco Becht at Iowa State. Now, he was good last year as a freshman, but he has taken leaps to where now they're winning games through the passing game. They always have a badass tight end, but Noel and Higgins, their wide receivers, are both fantastic. He's finding them open space. The running game is a rotating, like 3-man group of battering rams. They are very good. We've talked about them at length on the show, but Rocco Becht, taking that next step forward and making big play after big play, has taken them to that next level. This team believes in him. They love him. He's a leader on the team, and his step forward this year has been fantastic. And that's what happens when you stay in a program year over year. You wind up getting better. Not to knock the transfer quarterbacks, because there are some on this list, but I do think Rocco Becht has benefited by not jumping in the portal and seeing what better is out there. Yeah, there's more fanfare at other places that are not Iowa State historically and all that, but look, stay in the program. They've got the best chance right now to win the Big 12, them and BYU. Number 4, and I just realized I left somebody off this list. Jake Retzlaff is not on this list. He should probably be number 1. I'm mentioning Jake Retzlaff now because the graphics are already made. There's nothing I can do about it. But Jake Retzlaff should also be on this list. I'm sorry, BYU fans. Jake Retzlaff should be on the list. Occasionally I mess up. Nobody's perfect. But I did want to call attention to some guys who've been playing a lot better, like Chandler Morris at North Texas. Wasn't really fitting in at TCU anymore. It just wasn't going his way. He was supposed to start over Max Duggan. He gets hurt. Max Duggan comes in. They have the best season ever. Then last year, they just had chemistry problems all over the place. Eventually, he's replaced by Josh Hoover, who is TCU's best player right now, and someone that you'd certainly want on your team, and somebody who is on this list. Right here, Josh Hoover, number 3. Last year when he came in, looked a little uneven. He has taken leaps and bounds forward. And look, he's 16 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and a lot of those interceptions came in that Houston game, which has been tragic for TCU. But he's not their biggest problem. Their biggest problem is that they're not helping him out when he turns around and does this and gives the ball to a running back. They're not doing that well. But Josh Hoover, far from their biggest problem. As a matter of fact, they've got something to build around Josh Hoover in the future if they can get it pointed in the right direction at TCU. Number 2, Cade Klubnik. Cade Klubnik last year was the definition of average for Clemson. He was fine, but they didn't have a big play offense. They didn't use Will Shipley enough. They didn't have big play wide receivers. Now the Clemson offense and Garrett Riley are rolling along, and it's because Cade Klubnik's dual threat ability is being focused and showcased, and they are pushing the ball into his hands and making him make big plays. He has taken leaps and bounds. Now, have they beaten anybody yet? No. Did he struggle against the one team they did play and got blown out by? Yes. But I think in the games after that, he's shown huge steps forward, and I'm curious to see how well Klubnik plays down the stretch as they play some of the better teams on their schedule coming up at Clemson. And number 1, Kyle McCord. Kyle McCord transferred from Ohio State to Syracuse. I'm telling this story in case you're new to it, but if you've watched me at all, my constant wonder is what was the deal? What was the problem with Kyle McCord? And I need Ohio State fans to tell me this. Because if you send him out the door and then replace the offensive coordinator, are you saying that both things were the problem? Or are you maybe now realizing that the offensive coordinator was more of an issue because you hired Bill O'Brien, then he went to BC, and you've hired Chip Kelly, you brought in Will Howard, which is fine, not knocking Will Howard, just needs to understand math a little bit more at the end of games. But why send Kyle McCord away? He's one of the top passers in the country at Syracuse in an offense that utilizes his skill set a whole lot more. So I still just need answers from Ohio State on why send a guy who lost one game to the eventual national champion away. I don't get it. I'll never get it until somebody tells me. But Kyle McCord, he only lost one game last year. Now, he's lost more games at Syracuse, but he's also playing at Syracuse and not Ohio freaking State. So, Kyle McCord, to me, the best, most improved quarterback in the country. In the transfer portal last year, the way he even got tepid interest from a lot of people, I thought this is not a guy who's even going to get a chance to get drafted. Now, I think he's maybe even a late second day pick, probably early third day, but still, he's shown a skill set that we didn't believe he had. Plus, he's one hell of a leader of the Syracuse Orange. Have a great weekend, everybody.